Chapter 2348. This was the collision of two terrifying wills, even beyond the two of them. The power absorbed was also getting stronger and stronger, but Yishuan still had the upper hand. The Pope could only borrow the power of faith, but Yishuan could borrow the will of the entire human race. This was a fundamental difference, and Yishuan could borrow the will of the entire human race. This was a fundamental difference, and the power that Yishuan could borrow was stronger. Two unimaginable wills and power were instilled, raging in their bodies. Compared to Yishuan's fist intent to guide the world's will, the Pope completely used his body to carry the power of faith to fight. He was already injured, and now he had to forcibly support this burst of power. It could be said to be very difficult. At first, he was still able to fight evenly with Yishuan, but as time passed, he slowly fell into a disadvantage. Soon, even many believers below could see that blood was dripping from time to time. It was as if a heavy drop of blood was falling from the sky. Even the defensive enchantment was pierced through. One could well imagine how tyrannical the strength of the Pope was. However, even after borrowing the power of faith, he still couldn't suppress Yishuan. How terrifying was this? Of course, the Pope was injured, but the fundamental reason was that Yishuan's strength had reached a very terrifying level, even able to compete with the Pope. Boom! 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 From time to time, there was a thunderous sound in the sky. There was constantly a powerful force splashing, and a huge black hole was created by them. From a distance, it looked like a huge black hole, like a beehive. Looking at it would make people shudder. Boom! Thump, thump, thump. After a fierce collision, the Pope continued to retreat, coughing up blood, looking at Yishuan with a gloomy look in his eyes. After a fierce fight, although it seemed to only be a short time, but the collision between the two had already experienced thousands of times, and every heavy blow would aggravate his injury, making him look more stooped. Yishuan was invincible, expressionless, like a powerful god of war, not showing the slightest mercy. What to do? Is the Pope going to lose to that heathen? Many believers were completely dumbfounded at this time, completely unable to believe that the invincible Pope, the supreme ruler in their hearts, was actually being defeated under Yishuan's offensive. Suddenly, everyone was in an uproar. In the sky, Yishuan's offensive was getting tighter and tighter. It seemed as if he wanted to force him to death. Pooh! The Pope spat out a mouthful of blood. His eyes suddenly sharpened, and an indescribable divine power surged from his body. A powerful force erupted from his body. The majesty of the Lord is inviolable and cannot be tarnished. The Pope's expression was incomparably solemn. What was even more miraculous was that his originally stooped figure slowly straightened up. The Emperor's robe on his body looked even more majestic. Behind his back, a pair of wings actually sprouted. He was actually turning into an angel, going through the process of becoming an angel. What's going on? The Pope is turning into an angel. The Lord must have felt the Supreme Pontiff's prayer and granted him the power to become the Lord's most loyal guardian. That's great. His Holiness the Supreme Pontiff is going to become an angel. That way, this heretic won't be able to continue acting arrogantly. All the believers were excited to see the angel evolving in midair with their own eyes. For them, it was simply a great blessing. It made their faith in the Lord even more profound. There was only a little bit of wavering just now, but it was all restored in an instant. However, Yishuan just looked at the Pope turning into an angel without the slightest intention of stopping him. He said faintly, "You are trying to forcibly transform into an angel. After failing, you will be left with serious injuries." In front of him, the Pope, who had slowly turned into an angel, also had a flash of shock in his eyes at this time. Only the highest level within the Vatican knew about this matter. Even the real situation was only known by the Pope himself. Yishuan only took a glance, and he had already completely seen through it. This person had terrifying eyesight. However, the Pope didn't know that Yishuan had opened the eyes of redemption. In front of the power of redemption, any kind of concealment was meaningless. Everything was within his line of sight. Stupid, Our human race itself is already the most perfect Tao body. Every race is transforming into a Tao body. But you want to become a birdman, you have already embarked on the wrong path. No wonder you failed. Yi Shiwen said without any trace of politeness in his voice. You don't be too arrogant, said the Pope coldly. His vitality was overflowing, and the energy in his body was surging. Even mortals could see it with the naked eye. This was no longer as simple as burning his life, but a last-ditch effort. Even if I have to go to heaven to see the Lord, I will suppress you, a heretic, said the Pope slowly. Leaving you in this world is the greatest blasphemy to the Lord. Suppress me? Many people have said so, but no one has done it. Said Yi Shiwen, I will tell you that it is useless to become a birdman. The Vatican is destined to face a great disaster. Heretic die! The Pope shouted loudly. His voice hadn't even finished yet, and his entire body had already arrived in front of Yi Shiwen. His speed had already reached the pinnacle with the help of that pair of wings. In fact, his speed had increased by leaps and bounds compared to a moment ago. He blasted a punch, and an inexhaustible power of faith erupted from his fist. It seemed as if he was going to blast out of heaven. It was incomparably terrifying and powerful. Compared with just now, it was like a different person. This was the real trump card of the Pope. Although the angel transformation did not successfully turn him into an angel, even if it was only a temporary angel transformation, it could greatly improve his strength. Dang! His fist was blocked by a palm. It was useless. Although the Pope's speed was very fast, Yi Shiwen's speed was not slow at all. The terrifying collision set off a burst of sparks, and a frenzy of energy swept out in an instant. Yi Shiwen's speed was not slow at all. His counterattack followed like a shadow, arriving in an instant. In an instant, he already had a long sword in his hand, and instantly slashed down. At this time, countless demonic energies splashed out from Yi Shiwen's body, penetrating the vast sky like a real fallen angel. A pair of wings also faintly appeared behind him, and his speed instantly increased by several levels. Looking from a distance, it seemed like a collision between a fallen angel and an angel in the sky. Although these two were humans and not real angels, at this time, in the hearts of countless believers, it was as if the mythological era had come again. The angel and the fallen angel that only appeared in the mythological era had appeared in front of them. Then there was no doubt about the existence of the Lord. It was just that they were not sincere enough. Insignificant tricks. You're still far from being able to show off in front of me. The sword aura turned into a long dragon, and it swept down fiercely like a waterfall, bursting out with a loud collision sound. Right above the Pope's head, the Holy Bible was displayed at once. Countless holy lights burst out, like a waterfall falling in front of him. It actually blocked Yi Shiwen's angel sword. All of this took a long time to describe, but in fact, it was just a matter of an instant. Before everyone could react, the two sides had already fought again. After the angel transformation, the Pope himself could be said to be at the peak strength. If he went up another level, he could even compete with some of the weaker Transcendent Realm Masters. Suppressing ordinary Great Sage was as easy as flipping his hand. However, Yi Shiwen was not an ordinary Great Sage. Even if he was at the Great Sage peak, he could rely on his amazing martial arts comprehension and cultivation to burst out power far beyond this realm. Therefore, the Pope had tried his best, but he still couldn't do anything to Yi Shiwen. Two terrifying martial instruments fiercely fought in the sky. Whether it was the demonic energy that burst out of the angel, sort of like a mountain and river pouring down, or the holy light that burst out of the Holy Bible, it made the sun in the sky lose its color. The demonic energy and the holy light occupied half of the sky respectively, covering everything. For a time, only gold and gray could be seen devouring each other in the sky, like two huge waves colliding in the sky. It was extremely terrifying. Many people would not be able to see such a collision in their lives. Not only the martial instruments, but also the strength of the two were also competing and accumulating. Bang! However, a huge explosion was heard, and then the gold and gray mixed together, forming a chaos. It looked like a mess. The balance that was just achieved was completely disrupted in an instant. Everyone was nervous. Even if their strength had not reached that level, they could see that the outcome had been decided. What they cared about was the outcome of this battle. If the Pope won and suppressed the heretic, it would naturally be a happy ending for everyone. It would be the best result. But if the heretic won, when everyone thought of this answer, they couldn't help but shudder. They didn't dare to imagine how terrifying it would be if that was the case. Their beliefs were about to collapse. Crash! A figure fell directly from the center of the explosion. It was a golden emperor robe, but there was no one else except the Pope. "Pope!" someone exclaimed. His heart was extremely frightened. The person who lost turned out to be the Pope, the spokesperson of the Lord in their hearts. The Pope was actually defeated by the heretic. It was simply a bolt from the blue. Even if many people were prepared, they were already crying when they saw this scene. They were extremely frightened. The heretic won. The heretic actually won. How is this possible? Chapter 2349. Countless people felt that their faith was about to collapse. The heretic actually won. A heretic who deserved to go to hell actually won against the Pope, who was like a god to them. At this moment, their worldview collapsed, and even their faith was shaken. Although the Pope was not a god, in this world where there was no God, he was the representative of God. He was the incarnation of God. Now, even the representative and incarnation of God were defeated. It was completely unimaginable. The figure of the Pope fell directly into the Vatican, and he was no longer breathing. After exhausting his life force, he directly stopped breathing. The golden light that was originally condensed in the sky, which belonged to the power of faith, also collapsed in an instant, turning into a light rain that fell down. All the people who had diseases in their bodies were also healed by this light rain. But now the whole city was in panic and pain. Who would pay attention to such a small matter? Not only were they sad about the death of the Pope, but they were also afraid that Yi Shiwen would go on a killing spree. In their eyes, Yi Shiwen had undoubtedly become the most terrifying devil in hell, Satan. His terrifying devil might have already made everyone despair. Is God really going to abandon us, the sincere believers? But the only thing that they could rest assured was that Yi Shiwen did not take the opportunity to attack the Vatican, but turn around and left. For Yi Shiwen, he was not a homicidal maniac. Doing this was enough. He said that the Vatican would be in trouble. Now that the Pope had fallen, it was karma. For the Vatican, the trouble was far from this little bit. Yi Shiwen had killed his way to the Vatican, but in the end, they could not do anything to him. This was a huge blow to the prestige of the Vatican that had been accumulated for thousands of years. Not to mention that the strongest pope had died tragically. On the surface, the Vatican would lack the top powerhouses. The new pope would probably have to go through a struggle for power and profit, and compromise with each other. Even if he were to take the throne, under such circumstances, he would probably be badly battered. As for the clamoring for an expedition to the east, it was completely useless. At this time, if Yi Shiwen did not look for trouble with them, they would already be thanking the heavens, let alone looking for trouble with Yi Shiwen. Through this battle, they could also see that Yi Shiwen's strength was far beyond their imagination. The fact that he had single-handedly defeated the Vatican was already enough to shock the entire world. The appearance of such a powerful heresy in the East was not a good thing for the entire West. Apart from fighting against the demonic beasts, the East and the West basically couldn't see eye to eye on anything else. There were too many frictions between them. Basically, it was a situation where one side was losing while the other was gaining. However, even with such a big background, perhaps even the Dark Church wouldn't let go of this opportunity to wantonly expand. The Dark Church was already under a lot of pressure. How could they have the time to look for trouble with Yi Shiwen? Not to mention that the major families and sects in the East would not give up on infiltrating the West. The Holy See would not be able to spare any manpower for a long time. Even if they could spare some manpower, they would not dare to cause trouble for Yi Shiwen, and would only dare to stabilize the front lines. And Yi Shiwen's goal would also be achieved. The news of the fall of the Pope quickly spread throughout the world. Everyone was shocked by this news. The momentum of the Zhang family became even stronger. With such a powerful ancestor, the Zhang family would be extremely prosperous in the foreseeable future. And Yi Shiwen, who had done this, did not show any other signs. He disappeared in front of everyone. At least, in the eyes of the vast majority of people, he was considered to have disappeared and never appeared again. 200 years passed quietly. Soon, the appearance of Yi Shiwen 200 years ago had been forgotten by the vast majority of people. Even in the environment where everyone practiced martial arts after the cataclysm, it could be said that an entire generation had passed, or even 2 or 3 generations had been born. After all, most people could not practice to a higher realm. Those who could practice to the Xiantian realm could be regarded as a genius. But a Xiantian powerhouse could only live for more than 200 years. With the gap in the martial arts realm, the gap in lifespan would also increase. The legendary world of great unity did not descend. On the contrary, it was divided into stricter classes. This was a blatant mockery of the theory of more than 1,000 years ago. Every base city could be divided into elite and wealthy areas and peaceful areas. Although the technological progress of 1,000 years was not earth-shaking, it was enough to eliminate the stubborn disease of thousands of years. In any case, the poor, no matter how miserable they were, had enough social benefits from birth to death. However, for those high-level people, although 200 years was not a short time, in fact, most of the people in power in the past were still there. They could never forget that person who terrified them. 200 years was a lifetime for ordinary people. But for a great sage who was at most more than 1,000 years old, he had not even entered the peak of his life. Even with the terrible environment of the earth, a great sage who was more than 1,000 years old could only be regarded as more than half of his life. How could such a person die? Was there anything on the earth that could threaten that monster? He must be lurking somewhere. Therefore, even if Yi Shiwen did not show up again after the trip to Vatican City 200 years ago, people still did not dare to underestimate the Zhang family. Moreover, in a mere 200 years, the Zhang family was like a blowout. After Yi Shiwen left a complete series of cultivation experiences and some corresponding martial techniques, the Zhang family had more than 5 great sages and more than 10 sage realm masters in the past 200 years. Zhang Li, who had already entered the great sage realm, had cultivated to the peak of the great sage realm. The strength of the Zhang family had undergone earth-shaking changes in a short time. More than 100 years ago, Zhang Guijie had also entered the great sage realm, and finally achieved his wish to ascend to the highest position, making the Zhang family a supreme clan. Although he had retired now, the Zhang family had better control over the imperial court. In the mouth of many people, the Zhang family had truly become a supreme clan, the #1 clan in China, and even the world. Many ancient clans with a long history could not compare with the Zhang family in terms of strength. However, with Yi Shiwen's experience and power techniques, as well as the many heavenly treasures he had left behind, the Zhang family's strength had skyrocketed so fast that many people had not expected it. The Zhang family, which could only be regarded as the bottom among the top clans, had become an existence that everyone had to look up to in one fell swoop. It could even be comparable to the old behemoths with thousands of years of inheritance, such as Mount Shu and Kunlun. This was only the change in the past 200 years, and the Zhang family was still on the fast track of development. It was unimaginable to what extent it would reach after hundreds or thousands of years. Even if the current Zhang family did not have Yi Shiwen, it was enough to stand firmly without worrying about the pressure of others. However, the Zhang family had become more and more low-key in the past 200 years. Like other ancient clans, they had slowly appeared less and less in front of the public, especially after Zhang Guijie had also retired from the supreme position a few decades ago. The first and second generations of the Zhang family had appeared even less. Everything was transforming into an ancient clan with a heritage. Nowadays, the Zhang family no longer needed to occupy important positions in China and use the state machinery to ensure their family's prestige. The first and second generations had become many great sages, and the third generations had also entered the sage realm. This was the Zhang family's greatest heritage and the greatest confidence. There was a very simple shop in the civilian area of the great Fuzhou city. The decoration was like the style of thousands of years ago, and it seemed a little out of place with the surrounding modern style. The place at the end of the entire street was a little remote, and there were not many people on weekdays. The whole shop looked dazzling, but it was selling some handicrafts. Usually, there would be some people patronizing it. After all, in this day and age, everything was produced by machines from the assembly line. Such handicrafts were rare. Early in the morning, a somewhat stooped old man opened the door of the shop. Although he had white hair, he was quite strong. Then, he sat on the rocking chair next to him and started rocking. He would only get up reluctantly when there were people, but there were not many people in the early morning. "Grandpa-ye, Grandpa-ye." It didn't take long for a clear voice to be heard. It was a little girl who looked like she was carved out of jade, jumping and running towards him. Thump! The little girl fell directly to the ground, and her face was covered with dust. Slow down, you little monkey. Are you hurt?" The old man's aged voice had a bit of helplessness. "It's okay. It doesn't hurt. It doesn't hurt." The little girl giggled and got up from the ground. She was not delicate at all. Nowadays, children have been injected with genetic potions since they were young. Their bodies were hit hard, and it was difficult to break their skin under normal circumstances. It was just that the clothes on their bodies were a little dirty. The little girl continued to run over and directly bumped into the old man. The old man showed a smile on his face and patted her body to get rid of the dust. "Why are you up so early today?" the old man asked. "I'm going to kindergarten today. I won't be able to play with Grandpa-ye in the future, so Mom told me to come early to say goodbye to Grandpa-ye." The little girl smiled innocently, but her eyes were extremely lively. "And after you go, you have to listen to the teacher and have a good relationship with the other children," the old man said. And Mom and Dad said the same. The little girl nodded very hard, as if she was promising something. "Oh, Grandpa-ye, where's Big Sister Lee? I haven't seen Big Sister Lee for a long time." "Oh, so little Nuanyuan isn't here to see Grandpa, but to see Big Sister Lee?" the old man asked with a straight face. "Not really." The little girl was a little embarrassed, and her cute little face was a little embarrassed. "I'm also here to see Grandpa-ye." "Ha ha ha." The old man burst into laughter, his voice loud and clear. Chapter 2350. Yishuan patted the girl on the head. She stuck out her tongue and looked very cute. However, she was somewhat embarrassed that her thoughts had been seen through by Yishuan. "Grandpa-ye, why did Cicely take so long to come?" Nuanyuan asked directly when she realized that Yishuan had seen through her thoughts. "Oh, she's very, very busy. She's now a very high official. So how can she come so often?" Yishuan said with a chuckle. Nuanyuan was asking Dawn. It had been 200 years. She had never given up for 200 years. Yishuan knew that Dawn was interested in him, but he was not a person who could give her happiness. He would leave sooner or later. When that happened, was he going to leave her alone? Therefore, he quickly distanced himself from Dawn. However, Dawn was more stubborn than he imagined. Over the 200 years, she would come every once in a while. Sometimes she would not say a word and just sit there. She would also cook a meal for Yishuan. Yishuan could not persuade her, so he let her be. Although the two did not say a word, they had a tacit understanding. Neither of them pointed it out. Slowly, the neighbors in the neighborhood learned of the matter. After all, Dawn did not hide it every time she came. 200 years had passed. Not only had the Yi clan undergone great changes, but the two of them had also undergone great changes. Yishuan himself had become older and older. He had slowly aged like an ordinary person. From a teenager, to a young man, to a middle-aged man, and then to an old man. Little by little, he had gradually fallen into depravity. Perhaps no one would be able to see from his turbid eyes that he had once been a graceful person. Compared to him, Dawn did not change much. Her figure was still petite and hot. She had a youthful face, but compared to 200 years ago, she looked more mature and experienced. Therefore, little Nuanyuan called him Grandpa-ye, while she called Dawn Lee Cicely. This difference in seniority made Dawn tease him every time. Yishuan could only smile bitterly and shake his head. He didn't say anything. He had been an ordinary person for the past 200 years. He had slowly aged with the passage of time. This was his cultivation. This was his Tao. No one could stop him from following his Tao. And compared to Yi Shiwen, who had opened an accessory store after graduating from university and had been selling handicrafts for 200 years, Dawn was a lot more brilliant. Dawn, who had astounding talent in mecha piloting, was conscripted into the military after graduation. In 200 years, she went from a bottom-feeder soldier to the position of commander-in-chief of China's 8 Cosmos fleets. It could be said that she held great power and was famous. She could be said to be a goddess of the people. Although she was getting busier and busier, she would always make time to come here every 2 months. For 200 years, rain or shine, time did not make her lose patience. Instead, it made her more determined. How could it be said that Yi Shiwen wasn't moved at all? It was just that he was destined not to belong here. He didn't dare to accept anyone's kindness, and he couldn't afford to delay anyone. In the past 200 years, other than her rising in rank, her cultivation was also rising. Not long ago, she had even stepped into the great sage realm. Yi Shiwen did not help her much. Firstly, she had extraordinary talent. Secondly, Yi Shiwen knew that the Zhang family had contributed a lot behind the scenes. Everyone in the neighborhood knew about Dawn, so how could the Zhang family not know? Although they did not dare to disturb him, they were indirectly helping Dawn. Otherwise, although Dawn's family had some influence, it was insufficient for her to climb to such a high position in a short period of 200 years. The cultivation techniques and resources that Yi Shiwen had left behind in the Zhang family were secretly rewarded to Dawn in the name of the military. Otherwise, she would not have been able to rise to the great sage realm in such a short period of time. And after stepping into the great sage realm, her reputation became even greater. She had truly stepped into the highest echelons of China's military. Her future was limitless. And probably no one would have guessed that this ordinary-looking owner of a handicraft store would have any connection with the military goddess in the hearts of the masses. In this regard, the Zhang family also paid great attention to protecting Yi Shiwen's news. Even if someone occasionally saw it, the Zhang family would suppress the news, so no one knew about it. Thinking of Dawn, Yi Shiwen's face unconsciously revealed a smile. Seeing her step by step to the position of being the center of attention, he saw a metamorphosis. "Oh, Grandpa Yi, the next time Sister Li comes, you have to inform Nuanyuan immediately." Nuanyuan looked at Yi Shiwen and said with a serious face. Obviously, this matter was very important to her. Yi Shiwen laughed and said, "Got it. I don't know why the two of you hit it off so well." He patted Nuanyuan's little head and said with a smile, "All right, since you were going to kindergarten, be careful. Don't be late. Hurry up." "And got it? Goodbye, Grandpa Yi?" Nuanyuan nodded sensibly and bid farewell to Yi Shiwen. From afar, Yi Shiwen saw Nuanyuan's parents looking at him from afar. His eyes momentarily went into a trance. It was as though Nuanyuan's father was this old many years ago. Even Yin Nuanyuan's grandfather looked the same way. There were 3 generations of grandparents. One generation aged, the next was in his prime, and the next was growing up. Samsara was like this, endless. In a few more years, Nuanyuan would have a family. She would also have her own family. Then, she would have his children and grandchildren. Wasn't that how people were? Their lives would pass by in a hurry, and they would never be able to grasp their youth. The corners of his eyes were a little moist. It was unknown what he was thinking. Yi Shiwen seemed to have understood something. Something was like a thorn in his heart, and at that moment, it was about to burst. When he saw this scene, the most stubborn insistence in his heart suddenly cracked. He still vaguely remembered the look on Nuanyuan's father's face when he ran over to report the good news. It was the joy of becoming a father for the first time. Suddenly, an ancient ringtone sounded. In this day and age, who would still use such an ancient ringtone? It was probably an old fellow like Yi Shiwen. He took out his phone and tapped on the call button. A projection appeared in front of him. On it was a valiant and cute chick dressed in a military uniform. It was none other than Dawn. Even after 200 years, her youthful face did not change at all. She looked just like when Yi Shiwen first met her. "Why do you have the time to call me at this time?" Yi Shiwen said. His voice sounded a little aged, and there were some joyful emotions that he did not realize. Yi Shiwen, however, Dawn did not act as he expected. She did not reveal her cutest smile, but instead, she turned uncharacteristically solemn. "What's wrong?" Yi Shiwen sensed that something was amiss. "I love you," Dawn said softly. Yi Shiwen immediately sensed that something was amiss. The two of them had a tacit understanding, but she had never said such words before. Her tone was even more odd. "You know that I love you, right? For the past 200 years, you have been distancing yourself from me. I know that, but what can I do? I just like you." Dawn no longer had the solemn image she had in front of others. Her voice was choked with sobs. "Why didn't you give me a response? Why?" The corners of her eyes were moist. Over the past 200 years, time had not left any traces on her face. Yi Shiwen did not know what to say when the words reached his mouth. How should he say them? What was the point of saying them? "Listen, I don't have much time. Make it short," Dawn said. "In the future, when I'm not around, you have to take good care of yourself. If we meet again in the next life, can you chase after me? I'm really tired." There was a commotion from the other side of the video call. There was a series of exclamations. Also, the last sentence. "Yi Shiwen, you big bastard." Yi Shiwen immediately jumped up from his chair. With an agitated expression, he said, "What happened on your side? Tell me what happened on your side. Hey, don't scare me. Say something." However, the video call had been turned off. He could not receive any news at all. His heart palpitated as an ominous premonition instantly crept into his mind. "Dear viewers, we have an important piece of news. We have an important piece of news." At that moment, the television that was bought decades ago in the store was broadcasting the morning news. At that moment, an urgent piece of news was suddenly broadcasted. Just a moment ago, China's base on Jupiter was attacked by countless fey beasts. Jupiter-based city's garrison troops have already launched a counterattack. As for the 7th Fleet stationed on Jupiter's space station, they have also urgently entered the battle. However, the news from the front lines is extremely unfavorable. A large portion of the base city's defenses have been breached. The 7th Fleet, which has been deployed to defend, has also suffered heavy losses. Up to the moment we receive the news, they have lost at least a third of their forces. The following is the image sent from the front lines. The television was broadcasting the image taken from Jupiter in front of them. The flames of war raged across the sky. Huge and terrifying fey beasts were rampaging, sweeping towards Jupiter base city like a tide. Countless mechas were destroyed in the first collision. Among them, rare and terrifying fey beasts also appeared one after another. In the image, an incomparably huge Jiao dragon was particularly eye-catching. Its body was thousands of meters long, and it looked like a mountain crushing over. It made people shudder with fear. This time, the fey beasts have not only mobilized a large number of fey beasts to attack the Jupiter base, but many fey beast kings who have not shown themselves for a long time have also appeared in the attacking team. What everyone is looking at now is the Jiao Dragon King, who is known as the #1 fey beast king. Many years ago, he destroyed a large fleet in the west by himself. No one was able to stop him. According to the opinion of military experts, the fey beasts may have planned this operation to completely drive the human race out of Jupiter. As for the following news, our television station will pay close attention and broadcast it immediately. Chapter 2351. Although Jupiter's base city was also a base city, it was different from the base cities on Earth and Mars. It was at most a forward operating base. As it was still in the extremely dangerous Jupiter, there were not many civilians. It was basically a huge military base. From the beginning of its establishment, it was built using the military base as a blueprint. Usually, it could be said to be impregnable, and there was definitely a great sage presiding over it. However, it was the home base of the fey beast Jupiter. It was still chaotic and could be destroyed by the fey beast horde at any time. But even so, it was rare for them to be mobilized on such a large scale. Although the forward operating base on Jupiter was in a precarious situation, it was also because of this that the governments of various countries had invested countless elites into it. For example, one of China's 8 fleets was stationed on Jupiter just to watch over such a forward operating base. It was obvious how important it was. But now, An unprecedented catastrophe had happened. It could be said to be unprecedented. Maybe it was as the military expert had said. The Fey beasts could no longer tolerate the existence of the human forward operating base on Jupiter and planned on uprooting it. Yishuan suddenly understood why Dawn was behaving abnormally. She was bidding farewell. What should he do? Even with Yishuan's state of mind, he instantly panicked. He completely lost the decisiveness he had in the past. The details of the 200 years of companionship surged into his mind bit by bit. It messed up all his thoughts. It was not that he did not know how to judge. It was because this was his Tao. Whether he could truly attain Tao depended on the outcome of his Tao transformation. And now, the Tao transformation was in its final stages. He was already old, and in a few more years it would end. But now such a thing had happened. It put him in a dilemma. His hands were trembling, and his body was stiff. He had never been in such a situation before. How to choose, to the left or to the right? He was in a complete mess. At this moment, Jupiter was completely engulfed in the flames of war. China's forward operating base city was already surrounded by a massive sea of Fey beasts. At a glance, the Fey beasts were endless. The sky, the ground, and even the ground were filled with endless Fey beasts. Even the elite soldiers of the base city were terrified by the ferocious beasts that were so ferocious that even the elite soldiers of the base city were terrified. The front lines were broken one after another. They could not stop these crazy beasts at all. Bullets, lasers, rockets, and all sorts of martial arts flashed. Life was so fragile on the battlefield. Whether it was demonic beasts or human soldiers, it was the same. Mechs and martial arts experts were on the front lines, fighting for time. In the sky, the Seventh Fleet also broke into the atmosphere of Jupiter as soon as possible and started a decisive battle with the monsters. The huge battleships were hundreds of meters long, but in the face of the extremely huge monsters, they seemed so small and insignificant. From time to time, battleships wrapped in flames could be seen falling from the sky, crashing into the ground and causing a series of violent explosions. The demonic beasts in the sky became even more frenzied. Pterosaurs flew past one after another, and battleships were falling every second. On the flagship in the center of the Seventh Fleet, mecha were entering and exiting from time to time. Everyone didn't even have time to catch their breath. They were all racing against time because the battle had already reached the vicinity of the flagship. One could imagine how dangerous the battle situation was. Against such a massive number of Fey beasts, all formations and tactics were meaningless. The only thing they could do was to constantly kill. The main cannon, which was tens of meters thick, was constantly firing. Every time the ammunition was delivered, a powerful Fey beast would be blasted to death. Even a Sage Realm expert would be instantly blasted into nothingness if they failed to dodge in time. It could be said that it was the most terrifying weapon in the hands of the human race at present. In the bridge's command center, there was chaos. Countless people were entering and exiting, and on the commander's seat, Dawn's youthful face had a look of determination. After bidding farewell to Yi Shiwen, she had nothing else to ask for. Even if there was a great deal of reluctance in her heart, it was meaningless at that moment. Bridge retreat. Fire freely, Dawn said in a staid manner. Before the horde of Fey beasts attacked, the bridge was the first to retreat into the massive hull. Dawn stood up and said to her adjutant, "I'll leave the battleship to you. I'll head out to fight." "General, how can you head out now?" The adjutant immediately tried to dissuade her. "In this situation, what's the difference between commanding or not commanding? It's fine as long as you hold the fort. I'll head out to fight. We can't let the other party continue their rampage," Dawn said with a look of determination. With that said, her figure disappeared. When she appeared again, she was already in the maintenance room. There was a golden mecha that belonged solely to her. Moments later, she had entered the golden mecha. This was a special mecha that was specially designed for her. It was different from the mass-produced mecha. It was even more powerful, allowing her to fully express her strength. With this special mecha, she was even confident that she could match a peak Great Sage expert. Amidst the whistling sound, the golden mecha had already appeared on the battlefield. Instantly, it charged into the most intense area of the battle. Boom! A few Fey beasts failed to dodge in time and were slammed to death by the golden mecha. The most elite technology of the human race was reflected in the golden mecha. It was ridiculously sturdy. Even Fey beasts that were known for their bodies were slammed to death. Roar! An extremely terrifying roar came from afar. On the battlefield, everyone looked over and saw that in the sky, a figure was caught by two dragon claws and then torn into two halves in the air, and then swallowed by a huge dragon mouth. Everyone immediately panicked because many of them recognized the person that was torn into two. It was the peak great sage expert that presided over their forward operating base. It could be said that he was one of the top experts in China. However, he was swallowed by the Flood Dragon King. With a body that was more than 1,000 meters long, the gigantic dragon head danced in midair. It looked extremely terrifying. Boom! Another series of explosions sounded. It was the Flood Dragon's gigantic body sweeping over. The battleships that were swept by him exploded in midair. There was no other way out. Roar! Fey beasts are invincible. Today, we will flatten the human base. This huge flood dragon roared angrily, causing countless Fey beasts to follow suit and roar. The whole scene looked extremely terrifying. Even the most elite soldiers could not help but feel hopeless when they saw such a scene at this time. In the face of such an attack, it was almost impossible to defend. Jupiter was too far away from the base camps of Mars and Earth. Even if a great sage rushed over overnight, it would take a long time. The base cities would definitely fall during such a long time. At this time, the only thing that supported them was their long-standing discipline and the idea that they were going to die anyway. Even if they died, they would drag someone down with them. Evil dragon, you're courting death. A delicate shout reverberated on the battlefield. A golden figure rushed into the battlefield with lightning speed. A terrifying battleship slicing blade that was more than 100 meters long was grasped in her hand. She slashed fiercely towards the 1,000-meter-long flood dragon in the sky. Clang! There was a huge roar, like the sound of gold and iron colliding. Everyone saw the battleship slicing blade sliding on the flood dragon's scales, causing sparks to fly everywhere. However, it was unable to do anything to this flood dragon. However, the flood dragon had a ferocious smile on its face as it clawed at the golden figure. Swoosh! The golden figure instantly dodged. She pushed her speed to the limit and barely managed to avoid the gigantic dragon claw. At this moment, everyone saw what the golden mecha was. Many people cheered. Everyone recognized her. She was their goddess and also the army's god of war. She was an ace pilot, Dawn. However, Dawn's tiny face revealed a solemn expression. The battleship slicing blade in her mecha's hand was made using the most advanced alloy formula. Together with the refinement of a master refiner, an ordinary great sage would be cleaved in half if they were struck by the blade. The flood dragon was unharmed. Although the dragon race was famous for their powerful bodies, her battleship slicing blade could at least open a gash that was hundreds of meters long. How is this possible? You are Dawn Li? The flood dragon looked at Dawn Li and laughed sinisterly. This king has heard of your name. Among the weak human women, you are quite rare. It just so happens that this king has achieved great success today and is lacking a concubine that can hold the fort. If you are willing to surrender now, this king can spare your life. This king can even spare your subordinates, as long as they are willing to fight for this king. Dream on, Dawn said coldly. Her eyes were ashen, and she was already prepared to die. She had no intention of leaving this place alive. The golden mecha's gigantic battleship slicing blade instantly slashed out a gigantic beam of light at Flood Dragon King. Stubborn fool. This king gave you a chance, but you actually dared to refuse this king. However, this king likes strong women. Ordinary human women are too useless. They die after playing with them for a while. The Flood Dragon King laughed sinisterly, not caring at all. Dragons were lustful by nature. Even a flood dragon was tainted by this to a large extent. From fey beasts to human women, there was nothing he did not want. It was unknown how many women he had defiled over the years. Whoosh! A gigantic battleship slicing blade suddenly appeared in front of him. It was about to cleave his head apart. The golden mecha's speed had reached its peak. However, Flood Dragon King suddenly grabbed the battleship's slicing blade as his other gigantic claw swiped at the golden mecha. Chapter 2352. The gigantic claw tore through the firmament as it clawed at the golden mecha's body. Inside the mecha, Dawn was immediately alarmed. The Flood Dragon King had reached an inconceivable state. The specially made battleship slicing blade was unable to slice through his scales. If she were to be grabbed by him, only death awaited her. Bam! She did not even have the time to dodge before she was struck by the dragon claw. The entire mecha's armor was torn apart, revealing the figure within. If it were any ordinary pilot, they would have long been grabbed to death. Dawn's figure flew out of the mecha. Ha ha ha! Come here for this, king! The gigantic Flood Dragon King roared with laughter, causing the entire sky to tremble. The gigantic dragon claw swept over as it clawed at Dawn. There was a rumbling sound everywhere in the world. With the sound of wind and thunder, the gigantic dragon claw produced fey aura that filled the sky. It surged into the sky and tore apart the firmament. At that critical moment, a sword beam tore through the universe and cleaved down ruthlessly from 100 million feet away. Vile dragon, you are courting death. Boom! Accompanied by the angry roar, the terrifying Flood Dragon King was stabbed by the sword. The scales that Dawn's battleship slicing blade could not penetrate were pinned to the ground by the sword. With a loud boom, the massive body that spanned more than 500 kilometers came crashing down. Countless fey beasts that failed to dodge in time were smashed to smithereens. Cracks that stretched for more than 500 kilometers appeared in the ground. Dust flew everywhere, forming a powerful shockwave that flattened countless buildings. Who is it? How dare you sneak attack this king? Flood Dragon King roared as he constantly struggled in a bid to escape from the sword beam. However, the sword beam that descended from the sky seemed to condense into a real sharp sword. It did not dissipate at all. He had no means of escaping even if he wanted to. An azure-colored figure descended from the sky. Everyone saw that it was an elder with white hair and beard. He held a sword in hand as he walked across the sky. He appeared slow, but was actually fast. Instantly, he appeared in front of Dawn. Everyone's attention was focused on the old man before them. They compared him to the top-notch experts from the various sects in their memories. However, they found that none of them could match up to the old man before them. Since when did such a big shot appear in the human race? That shocking figure from 200 years ago wouldn't be in their memories. Moreover, Yi Shiwen had aged a long time ago compared to 200 years ago. Even the people who knew him back then wouldn't be able to recognize him. When Dawn saw the person in front of her clearly, her eyes could not help but moisten. Tears had already blurred her vision. She had never cried even when facing death, but at that moment, she could not stop the tears from rolling down her beautiful face. Why are you crying again? People will think that I am bullying you again, Yi Shiwen said with a smile. He raised his old hand and wiped away her tears. You are the one who bullied me. Dawn slapped his hand away and said reproachfully. Even she, who had been living with Yi Shiwen for 200 years, had never imagined that Yi Shiwen would one day appear in front of her in such a manner, as though he was a king that reigned over the world. She didn't know why Yi Shiwen, who had once appeared in the campus, had slowly become mediocre and had drifted further and further away from her life trajectory. If it wasn't for her perseverance, she was sure that Yi Shiwen would have definitely disappeared in front of her, and would have disappeared in front of her. Even so, even with the two of them together, she had a feeling that Yi Shiwen could leave at any moment. That feeling of insecurity urged her to cling on to Yi Shiwen without letting him go. She knew that Yi Shiwen was definitely not as simple as he seemed on the surface. However, she never expected that Yi Shiwen was not only not simple, he was simply not simple. The Flood Dragon King that she could not do a thing against had been immobilized by Yi Shiwen with a single strike, leaving it unable to retaliate. She was very curious, but she did not ask. She did not ask anything. Yi Shiwen smiled and said, I will explain everything to you. However, let's clean up this trash first. He turned his head to look at the Flood Dragon King that was constantly twisting and struggling at his feet. His eyes were filled with killing intent. In the end, he chose to come to the rescue. 200 years of persistence and hard work had been for naught. Although he did not regret it, he was filled with boundless killing intent towards these people that had destroyed his cultivation. "Let this king go," Flood Dragon King roared. "You are just a beast that managed to cultivate to the transcendent realm by luck. How dare you stir up a bloody storm in the human world? No one can save you." Yi Shiwen's eyes were extremely cold. He could tell at a glance that the Flood Dragon King had already cultivated to the transcendent realm. In this world, the laws had been modified. Originally, once one cultivated to the transcendent realm, he should immediately ascend. However, he had used a mystic technique to suppress his cultivation to prevent the laws of this world from rejecting him. Therefore, even Dawn was no match for the Flood Dragon King, even if she used a special machine. This was because the two of them were no longer on the same level. Although he could fool others, he could not fool Yi Shiwen's eye of redemption. "How do you know?" Flood Dragon King roared as blood flowed from his body. The Sword of Light was also constantly trembling, as if it was about to be broken by him. "How dare you show off your insignificant skills in front of me? You destroyed my cultivation and prevented me from achieving Tao. Do you know how great the karma is? It's so great that you can't cleanse this karma, even if you are destroyed." Yi Shiwen said coldly. Yi Shiwen no longer suppressed his cultivation and released it bit by bit. The world was changing. He had originally suppressed his cultivation to avoid being rejected by the Earth space. Now, it seemed like there was no need for that. He didn't know when the demon's summoning banner appeared in his hand. He threw it out fiercely, and a shocking demonic aura swept out, creating boundless waves that spread in all directions in an instant. Roar! 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 After the roars of the demonic beasts, there was endless silence. Wherever this terrifying wave of demonic chi passed, all the demonic beasts were vaporized. Their flesh and blood were also instantly devoured by the demon's summoning banner, evaporating in an instant. The endless sea of beasts that looked like a sea of people had turned into dust. It was unknown if there were millions or tens of millions of them. In an instant, all of them turned into ashes. Even the powerful Jiao Dragon King was no exception. In front of the artifact, whether it was a great sage or a transcendent realm, there was no difference. Such a scene was too shocking. Many of the Chinese soldiers, who had already entered a state of despair, felt that it was an unforgettable scene. They never knew that an artifact could have such terrifying power. Even the legendary Mount Shu's purple-green dual swords paled in comparison. At that moment, Dawn was horrified to discover that Yi Shiwen, who was in front of her, was rapidly shriveling up as though his flesh and blood had been sucked dry. His originally spirited appearance was instantly sucked dry to the point of being skin and bones. Indeed, using the demon summoning banner is still too forceful. Yi Shiwen coughed twice and said dryly. It was given to him by the main body to protect him. A gigantic rift opened in the sky, and a powerful suction force shot down. The power that clearly exceeded the limits of this world was being repelled by the space. The demon's summoning banner wrapped around the ring on Yi Shiwen's hand and flew into the rift. How did this happen? How did this happen? How did this happen? Dawn's tears flowed down uncontrollably. She hugged the skinny Yi Shiwen and did not dare imagine an even more terrifying outcome. "I'm fine." Yi Shiwen turned around with great difficulty. His skinny body looked incomparably terrifying. "Listen to me. I don't have much time left. I remember every single detail of the past 200 years. I have never forgotten it. Then why didn't you accept me?" Sob. Dawn could not help but sob softly. "I'm not a person of this world to begin with. If I were to accept you, I would only be harming you. In the future, without me, you have to take care of yourself. Don't recklessly rush out like you did this time. If there's anything in the future, you can find the Zhang family. They will help you," Yi Shiwen said dryly. His voice was hoarse like a night owl's. "I don't want to. I don't want you to leave. Dawn could no longer hear him. Her mind was in chaos. Listen to me. You don't have to be sad. I'm not dead. It's just that my avatar has collapsed. It's just a trivial matter, Yi Shiwen said nonchalantly. Compared to vindicating his Tao, the collapse of an avatar was indeed a trivial matter that was not worth mentioning. I will find you. I definitely will. Dawn's sobbing voice resounded throughout the battlefield. And in her arms, Yi Shiwen's body began to shatter inch by inch. Just as his voice faded, he turned into a rain of light in front of everyone's eyes and dissipated into the sky. On the battlefield, everyone was stunned. They were at a loss as to what to do. The terrifying Fey beast horde that made them extremely nervous and thought that they were doomed had completely dissipated. And all of this had come at a terrible price. Everyone roughly understood the elder's situation. He had probably suffered a backlash from an artifact. They also calmed down the horror in their hearts. How could there not be any repercussions from forcefully using such a terrifying artifact? Yi Shiwen, you bastard. I will definitely find you. On the battlefield, Dawn's voice was intermittent as it was drowned in the tsunami of cheers that followed. Tears could not help but fall onto her hands. She felt like a piece of her heart had been dug out. She could not grasp the future at all. At the same time, in a majestic palace on a particular mountain peak in the heavenly realm, Yi Shiwen suddenly opened his eyes. A flag flew in and into his body. Chapter 2353. Yi Shiwen opened his eyes and sighed. He had failed to complete the true transformation process at the last moment. It was too obvious to use the demon beckoning banner with the strength of a doppelganger. In the end, it led to the collapse of his physical body. He would have been dead by now if he was only a person with the cultivation of a great sage. It was just an avatar. Although it took a lot of effort, it collapsed anyway. It was a pity that the final Tao transformation was not completed. A group of golden light flew over and flew into Yi Shiwen's body. It was the avatar's spirit. Bits and pieces of 200 years poured into his mind. But this was the result in the end. Yi Shiwen suddenly felt that he was ridiculous. It was really ridiculous. He had to painstakingly live the life of an ordinary person and wanted to prove his Tao. However, he didn't know that he was no longer an ordinary person. The past was the past after all. Perhaps the failure of Tao transformation this time was fate itself. The past was gone forever. No one could reverse time. Not even Yi Shiwen. So that's it? That's it? My obsession doesn't exist. It's so ridiculous. Yi Shiwen laughed loudly. His laughter shook the entire palace. The entire mountain range shook in this laughter. Gao Chengxing abruptly stood up. He lived in another palace, which was a little strange. Unless it was time for his master to preach, he would always be in a state of closed-door training. He had been like this for the past 200 years. What on earth could make him laugh so carefreely? A whole 200 years made him feel that his life was more fulfilling and exciting than his previous life of more than 1,000 years. Everything he had seen was more amazing. In the past, he thought that transcendent realm was already the peak. Later, he thought that celestial realm was already the peak. He had never heard of mysterious realm. It was not something that a casual cultivator like him could come into contact with. But now, following Yi Shiwen, in these 200 years, his cultivation went all the way like a hot knife through butter. He directly soared all the way to Paoang Realm 5th level, and all this only took 200 years. In the past, if he could cultivate to such a level in 200 years, he would wake up laughing even in his dreams. However, in the past 200 years, he had not only grown in strength. More importantly, he was no longer the country bumpkin who had just arrived in the heaven realm and didn't know anything. His knowledge was also increasing day by day. After traveling in the heaven realm for so many years, he understood how rare it was to follow this master of his. A powerful deity was listening to his every word. This kind of treatment, in the eyes of ordinary people, even those peerless geniuses did not have this kind of treatment. In the past 200 years, Yi Shiwen had personally taught him the power technique, personally preached the Tao, and countless cultivation resources that Yi Shiwen had accumulated in the past. In addition, he would travel to the heavenly realm from time to time, which allowed his cultivation to advance very quickly, far beyond the imagination of ordinary people. Therefore, it was not too surprising to have such cultivation. In order to stabilize his foundation, Yi Shiwen even deliberately suppressed the progress of his cultivation. In the past 200 years, the master and disciple had been staying in this mountain range in the heavenly realm. Yi Shiwen had personally arranged the array formation. It had instantly turned this ordinary mountain range into a fairyland on earth. It was a paradise. Cultivating in this place would definitely yield twice the results with half the effort. Slowly, various palaces were also built. For people with great magical power, this was just a matter of raising their hands. He even had the idea of re-establishing the pilgrimage palace in the heaven realm. With his current demigod cultivation, although it was impossible to build an immortal inheritance, it was more than enough to build a first-class force. However, with Yi Shiwen in charge, it was possible to say that it was an immortal inheritance. But for some reason, Yi Shiwen suppressed this idea. He did not object to it. He only said that the time was not ripe yet, so he could only suppress this idea reluctantly. However, since his master was smiling so happily, something good must have happened. Naturally, he was also happy. But immediately, he saw an incomparably shocking scene. He saw that the boundless purple aura in the sky was coming from the east. At a glance, it covered millions of miles of land. In the sky, golden lotuses appeared out of thin air and fell down. One of them fell on his body. He found that this golden lotus actually contained the Great Way. Some of the things that he originally had difficulty understanding suddenly became clear. He suddenly realized that these golden lotuses were not simple. They turned out to be directly transformed from the Great Way. He quickly stretched out his big hand and suddenly grabbed these golden lotuses. The changes in the world continued. There was a faint chanting sound of deities. It seemed as if fairies had appeared in the sky and were dancing. All kinds of Dharma images and divine sounds appeared one after another. Bulsh *T. After being taught by Yi Shiwen for so long, how could he not know that this was the sign of becoming a deity? Clearly, someone had become a deity. However, the problem was that in this mountain range apart from him, there was only his master. His master had already proven his Tao, but he had not. Who was this person who had proven his Tao? He was a little puzzled, but at this time he did not have the time to think so much. He quickly absorbed these golden lotuses. This was the side benefit of proving his Tao. As the saying goes, when a man achieves Tao, his fowls and dogs also rise to heaven. It was definitely not as simple as him obtaining it. Those who followed him would also obtain great benefits. And the benefits were definitely not limited to this. Within a radius of millions of miles, all the places that were shrouded by the purple aura suddenly grew many heavenly treasures that could not have grown in the past. All of a sudden, this place became a treasure land with good feng shui. A deity had proven his Tao here. This place would also receive great benefits and be favored by the heavens. The babies born here, no matter what race, were far more intelligent than those born in other places. At this time, the entire heaven realm had also caused a sensation because someone had successfully proven his Tao. Although the purple aura only shrouded the area within a few million miles, it was impossible to count how many top masters there were in the entire heaven realm. There were many deities. It was difficult to escape their perception. Otherwise, Yi Shiwen would not have been discovered as soon as he arrived in the heaven realm. Not to mention such a big thing as proving his Tao. The world was changing, and the heavenly way was changing. How could they not feel such a big thing? Countless tyrannical divine senses swept through the entire heaven realm. Although the heaven realm was vast and boundless, it could not block the perception of these powerful deities. This is not the place of the major sects and immortal inheritances. So, is this not a disciple of the famous sects? Impossible. Who the hell has proven his Tao? There should be no young hero who can prove his Tao in the major sects recently. Who the hell is this? Is it a rogue cultivator? Look at that direction. Could it be the direction of the outsider named Yi Shiwen? Many people felt the direction of the purple aura, but the problem was that everyone knew that it was occupied by Yi Shiwen. In the past 200 years, Yi Shiwen had not come out of the mountain at all. Gradually, although many people were still vigilant against him, no one had the intention to disturb him. Slowly, they even somewhat forgot about him. Although he had offended the vice sect master of the martial sect, even the people of the martial sect did not come forward to say anything. Why would they bother to offend such a powerful expert for the martial sect? Moreover, there was a huge monster like the hidden valley behind him. There was no need at all. However, everyone was a little strange. As they knew, Yi Shiwen had already proven his Tao, and his disciple, Gao Qingye, was still far from proving his Tao. The difference was like heaven and earth. Even if 200 years had passed, it was impossible for him to really have a chance to prove his Tao. Then who exactly had proven his Tao? If it was an ownerless place, they would have flown over long ago. However, that place was occupied by Yi Shiwen. If they did not give face to the monk, they would have to give face to the Buddha. If they angered Yi Shiwen, it would not be a good idea. If it was someone else who had proven his Tao, how could Yi Shiwen not have any reaction at all? Many people were extremely puzzled, but Yi Shiwen naturally could not give them any explanation. At this moment, in the middle of the mountain range, Yi Shiwen's figure slowly appeared in the sky. At this moment, the vision in the sky slowly dissipated. Gao Qingye absorbed the golden lotuses and only felt that his cultivation was not as simple as that. His cultivation had also directly rushed from the 5th level of the Paoang realm to the 7th level of the Paoang realm. It could be said that he had stepped from the middle level of the Paoang realm to the late level of the Paoang realm in one fell swoop. His strength had undergone an earth-shaking change. Moreover, because he had directly absorbed the golden lotuses that were directly transformed from the great Tao, they were all the purest Tao. Therefore, he would not feel any discomfort or unstable foundation. So Yi Shiwen did not stop him from absorbing. When a person achieves Tao, even his chickens and dogs will ascend to heaven. Wasn't this the case? It was time to share the benefits. Gao Qingye hurriedly bowed at Yi Shiwen. Disciple welcomes master out of seclusion. Greetings, master. Gao Qingye hadn't grown old as compared to 200 years ago. On the contrary, he had grown younger. He had the appearance of a middle-aged man several hundred years ago. But now, he had the appearance of a young man. He looked a bit younger than Yi Shiwen. His cultivation was becoming more and more profound. Compared to his demigod cultivation, 1,000 years was indeed not considered much. Even his teenage years were barely enough. Get up, Yi Shiwen said with a smile. He was in a good mood after vindicating his Tao. He had finally vindicated his Tao. In order to vindicate his Tao, he had been struggling for centuries. This was extremely unbelievable to him. Although there were many twists and turns along the way, he had finally vindicated his Tao. The greatest obstacle to his Tao vindicating was his obsession. When he let go of these obsessions, and even the obsession of vindicating his Tao to save Dawn, he had truly undone the knot in his heart. The obstacle to vindicating his Tao no longer existed. Chapter 2354. After untying the knot in his heart, he naturally confirmed his Tao. He had already passed the god's retribution, so he naturally did not need to go through the retribution again. Everything was natural. In order to save Dawn, he gave up the obsession in his heart. This happened to be in line with the concept, allowing him to finally resolve the knot in his heart and finally confirm his Tao. As the saying goes, everything is determined by the heavens. The heavenly way was impermanent. No one could really peek into the future. No one knew what the future would be like. Just like Yi Shiwen, his Tao confirmation was so tortuous, but in the end, it was resolved so easily. Gao Qingye looked at Yi Shiwen. He only felt that his master seemed to be different, but he really couldn't tell what was different. One must know that Yi Shiwen was already unfathomable in his impression. Although he felt that Yi Shiwen was even more unfathomable now, there was no way to tell what specific changes there were. However, he could feel that Yi Shiwen had become stronger, and it was naturally a good thing for him that his master became stronger. Yi Shiwen looked at Gao Qingye and sighed. He didn't know what to say. On Earth, the foundation he left behind, the pilgrimage palace, had been destroyed once. Only little Xian was left as a descendant. It could be said to be extremely miserable. In the next 200 years, he also took care of little Xian and nurtured her. He spared no effort. With his guidance, little Xian had leaped from having no foundation to a great sage-level master in these 200 years. After becoming a great sage, Yi Shiwen no longer restrained her and let her go out on her own. Those forces that destroyed the pilgrimage palace were all found by her. Even Yi Shiwen gave her the Sword of Angels. How could those forces that resisted stubbornly be her opponent? They were all annihilated by her. None of the big shots who participated in it escaped. Although many sects were very dissatisfied, there was no way to say anything. It was what they did. Moreover, no matter how strong they were, could they be stronger than Yi Shiwen, who killed the Vatican? Although Yi Shiwen had not appeared for 200 years, his prowess back then was still deeply imprinted in the hearts of those old guys. Although they were very dissatisfied, there was nothing they could do. Moreover, Xiaoxian had the support of the Zhang family. The Zhang family was now the top force in Huaxia, and its weight was naturally different. He also left the Sword of Angels to Xiaoxian, so he naturally did not have to worry. Just a few years before he left Earth, the pilgrimage palace had been rebuilt and began to accept disciples. In the future, Xiaoxian would probably be remembered as the leader of the pilgrimage palace. However, Yi Shiwen didn't feel sad. Xiaoxian's strength had already reached the great sage realm. It was estimated that he would ascend to the heaven realm in a few years. They would naturally meet again at that time. She and Gao Qingye would also have the opportunity to meet again. Aren't you going to rebuild the pilgrimage palace in the heaven realm? You can start now, Yi Shiwen said. Thank you, Master, Gao Qingye said quickly with joy. Finally, he could rebuild the foundation of the human world. As the founder of the pilgrimage palace, he had poured too much effort into the pilgrimage palace, and he had too many feelings. It was just that in the heaven realm, he had become an insignificant figure at the bottom from a top master. Rebuilding the pilgrimage palace was also a distant thing. Now, the time was finally ripe. But in comparison, personal strength cultivation is the most important thing. Don't delay your own cultivation for the development of the pilgrimage palace. As long as you achieve Dao one day in the future, you will have endless time to run the pilgrimage palace. You don't have to be in a hurry at all. Do you understand the importance of priority? Yi Shiwen said with a straight face. Understood, said Gao Qingye, but he didn't have much confidence. He admitted that he didn't have the amazing ability of his master. It was really hard to say whether he could achieve Dao in the future. Even the top heaven's pride in the heaven realm didn't dare to say that they could achieve Dao. Yi Shiwen sighed. He could see that Gao Qingye still had a lot of thoughts on the pilgrimage palace. It was bound to drag down the cultivation of his main body. This was also the reason why he had been suppressing the idea of rebuilding the pilgrimage palace for so long. Xiaoya had no worries and didn't have to consider these trivial things, so she could cultivate without distractions. Her cultivation speed was even faster than him. In terms of personal cultivation, Gao Qingye couldn't compare with Xiaoya. However, everyone had their own fate after all. Yi Shiwen couldn't force him, so he could only let him be. The news of Gao Qingye re-establishing the pilgrimage palace and opening the mountain gate to recruit apprentices quickly swept the entire heaven realm. Yi Shiwen himself was the target of many top deity masters. Now that his apprentice opened the mountain gate to recruit apprentices, it was conceivable that it would attract everyone's attention. But compared to Yi Shiwen, Gao Qingye's reputation in the hearts of the ordinary people was even greater. Yi Shiwen had a stunning performance 200 years ago, but Gao Qingye was different. During these 200 years, he would travel from time to time, and very soon, he had accumulated a great reputation. In the current heaven realm, the deities were also reclusive. Under normal circumstances, they wouldn't appear at all. Many people might not even see the deities in their lifetime. Their lifespan was really too long. Time didn't matter to them at all. The real decision-makers were those demigods. Yi Shiwen didn't appear, but Gao Qingye made a big name for himself. He was recognized as one of the demigod masters. Even many high-level demigods couldn't do anything to him. Therefore, when he said that he wanted to reopen the mountain gate and rebuild the pilgrimage palace. Many people knew. Therefore, the news of the pilgrimage palace's reconstruction actually attracted the attention of all levels in the heaven realm. Moreover, the palace master of the pilgrimage palace was still Gao Qingye, and Yi Shiwen didn't even have a title. Only the top deity masters knew that this seemingly newly established pilgrimage palace actually had a deity behind it. Compared to ordinary immortal inheritances, it was not at all inferior. After all, the true foundation of the immortal inheritances were the deities. There was a huge difference between having a deity and not having a deity. Therefore, they didn't dare to underestimate this newly established pilgrimage palace. Naturally, the others were the same. They didn't dare to underestimate the pilgrimage palace for Gao Qingye's sake. Therefore, in the eyes of outsiders who didn't know the truth, the strongest master of the pilgrimage palace was Gao Qingye. However, in the hearts of those who knew the truth, there was no doubt who the strongest master of the pilgrimage palace was. Especially when the major immortal inheritances and even the martial arts sects sent people to send congratulatory invitations. Everyone who didn't know the truth was shocked. What was going on? Did Gao Qingye have such a great reputation? Even the immortal inheritances had personally sent congratulatory invitations. Even the martial arts sect, an inheritance that had produced an emperor, had never looked at an ordinary sect seriously. At this time, they had personally sent Qin Lai, who had just proven his weight 200 years ago and was in the limelight, to personally send congratulatory invitations. This was an unprecedented honor. For a moment, the pilgrimage palace was in the limelight. Many smart people were also guessing and considering what kind of master was standing behind the pilgrimage palace. Otherwise, with the immortal inheritance's virtue, whose eyes were almost on top of their heads, why would they pay attention to a brand new sect that had just been established? There must be a reason that many people didn't know. At this time, many people with good memories suddenly remembered that someone had mentioned Gao Qingye's master in the past. Gao Qingye was able to cultivate to such a level in a short period of 200 years and become a famous genius master in the heaven realm. This was related to the master behind him. It was just that over the years, Gao Qingye's name had become more and more famous. Very few people had mentioned his master anymore. In many people's opinion, whatever achievements he had were achieved by himself. In addition, Yi Shiwen had not come out of seclusion for many years. Many people didn't even know that such a person existed. However, if this was the case, then Gao Qingye's master was also an unfathomable existence. A person who could make the major immortal inheritances treat him so seriously was probably an unimaginable existence. In particular, Qin Lai had personally come to congratulate him. This made more people speculate that there must be some powerful person standing behind him. Otherwise, Gao Qingye wouldn't have such a great reputation. Gao Qingye had been very busy these days. He had just opened up the mountain, and there were many places where he didn't have competent manpower. Fortunately, he had actually taken a liking to many people during his many years of travel. He was just waiting for Yi Shiwen to speak up. This suddenly pulled them in, alleviating the problem of the lack of manpower. He even personally opened up the mountain and accepted 7 apprentices as the first apprentices of the mountain. However, fortunately, when he was in the human world, he personally managed the pilgrimage palace. Many things were handled in an orderly manner, and there were no major problems. In the end, he managed to survive through the initial period. In particular, the congratulatory cards sent by the major immortal inheritances made him feel even more proud. However, the arrival of one person made him not dare to act arbitrarily, and directly led him to the back mountain where Yi Shiwen was cultivating. It was none other than Qin Lai. Qin Lai personally brought the congratulatory card. It seemed to be congratulating the pilgrimage palace. But Gao Qingye knew very well that he was not important enough for a god to personally send a congratulatory card. He knew that this was a good friend of his master. "Brother Yi, I haven't seen you for 200 years. Your cultivation has improved a lot." Qin Lai saw Yi Shiwen and immediately ignored Gao Qingye. Gao Qingye also left tactfully. "How can I compare to Brother Qin? In just 200 years, you've actually entered the intermediate immortal level. It seems that it's only a matter of time before you reach the advanced immortal level. Yi Shiwen could tell at a glance that Qin Lai's cultivation advancement was frighteningly fast. In just 200 years, he was actually about to break through to the advanced immortal level. In comparison, Yi Shiwen was only in the beginner immortal level. Of course, cultivation did not equate to combat power. Chapter 23:55. At that moment, Yi Shiwen naturally did not know that he had become a legend. He had become a legendary figure that many people speculated about. In the past 200 years, he had basically been in a state of seclusion to fully comprehend the Heaven Way. Although he could not progress further, he could still comprehend. With the help of the mysterious space, his speed of comprehension might be able to frighten many people. It was rare for him to have such a long time to comprehend the Heaven Way. When he woke up, it was already 200 years later. In these 200 years, he fully comprehended in the mysterious space. It was enough for him to go further and directly enter the peak of intermediate immortal level. With the long lifespan of a god, it was shocking enough to have such a progress in just 200 years. Of course, the price was that his wealth was exhausted again as he broke it down into energy to supply the mysterious space. Apart from a few god artifacts, he only had the things that his clone had brought to Earth. However, those resources were all left in the Zhang family. Heavenly resources of that level were of no use to him at the moment. That's right. He had only comprehended one level higher, but he had already used up his entire life's worth of energy. This kind of consumption left him speechless. Even so, he did not regret it. The most important thing in this world was still his strength. After his clone returned and he became a real god, the last obstacle for him was no longer there. It was only a matter of time before he broke through. He initially wanted to wait until the pilgrimage palace was rebuilt to fully focus on breaking through the intermediate immortal level. With his 200 years of accumulation, it would not be a problem to rush to the peak of intermediate immortal level. By then, even the existence of peak immortal level would not be a match for him. Unless there was an existence of imperishable level, he did not have to be afraid of anyone. Yi Shiwen looked at Qin Lai strangely. Although the pilgrimage palace was built by his disciple, he did not show up and let others speculate. The other immortal inheritances only sent congratulatory cards from those who knew his identity. Qin Lai personally sent the congratulatory card with great fanfare. It was too much of a compliment. Hearing Yi Shiwen's compliment, Qin Lai was somewhat proud. He was a true descendant of the Qin family. In addition to his outstanding talent, he had heard all kinds of compliments since he was young. He was already numb and used to it. However, Yi Shiwen was different. He still recognized Yi Shiwen's existence deep down in his heart. Yi Shiwen was on the same level as him. No, he was afraid that Yi Shiwen was even stronger than him. 200 years ago, Yi Shiwen was able to defeat senior immortal Yuan Miao, who was at the late stage of the immortality realm. It was hard to imagine how deep his cultivation was now. Even if there was no improvement, Yi Shiwen might not be able to defeat senior immortal Yuan Miao if he used all his trump cards. Such a person's praise, even if it wasn't sincere, was something to be proud of. No, it's nothing, Qin Lai said with a smile. In the past 200 years, he had suffered a lot. In addition, the martial arts sect had nurtured him wholeheartedly and given him all sorts of resources. That was why he had been able to break through continuously. Under normal circumstances, many gods would take tens of thousands of years to advance. And this was if they had the potential to advance. If they did not have the potential to advance, it would be normal for them to not make any progress for tens of thousands of years. The path of the gods had existed for a very long time. Due to the fact that they had not made any progress for a very long time, many gods had even given up on cultivation and gone into hibernation in hopes of obtaining an opportunity to make a breakthrough. But you're not cultivating now, and you've come personally to send a congratulatory note. I'm afraid it's not as simple as celebrating the establishment of a sacred palace. Yi Shiwen looked at Qin Lai and said. He was a little hesitant about Gao Qingye wanting to rebuild the sacred palace in the Heaven Realm. One must know that the Heaven Realm was not his territory. Although it was the base camp of the human race, many people were not friendly. He originally planned to bring Gao Qingye back to the Hidden Valley, but now it seemed that Gao Qingye planned to take root here. Now, he had nothing to give to Gao Qingye. Whether Gao Qingye could become a god or not depended on his own luck. He could not help in this regard. However, in order for the pilgrimage palace to gain a foothold in the heaven realm, they naturally needed a strong backer. When he was not around, Qin Lai could take care of them. Qin Lai might have had this intention as well. He had come with great fanfare to send the congratulatory card to intimidate those who were ready to make trouble. "Aha, I can't hide anything from you," Qin Lai said. "I'm here to bring you a message. Be careful of Senior Immortal Yuan Miao." Yi Shiwen's eyes flickered and said, "What do you mean?" Although Venerable Yuan Miao was defeated by him, he didn't dare to underestimate her in the slightest because behind her stood the unfathomable old ancestor of the Yuan family. That time, she directly took her away from his hands. Obviously, her attitude towards him wasn't that good. Qin Lai almost broke through to the late stage of the immortality realm in just 200 years. It could be seen that the foundation of the martial sect was deep, far beyond his imagination. If Senior Immortal Yuan Miao went further, then he would be in danger. Thinking of this, he was even more eager to break through. "It's very simple. I also brought you a solution." After negotiations, the Yuan family is also willing to compromise. 20 years later, you and Senior Immortal Yuan Miao will fight. No matter who wins or loses, the Yuan family will not pursue the matter of you and your master anymore. Qin Lai looked at Yi Shiwen and said, "From now on, we will not make a fuss about this matter." However, the corner of Yi Shiwen's mouth raised into a mocking smile and said, "You're really good. Don't tell me that the Yuan family doesn't even have a little sense of right and wrong. Do I have to be manipulated by you? Although your martial sect is great, it's not to the point where you can make me surrender with just your prestige. At most, I won't stay in the heaven realm. If I go back to the Hidden Valley, do you think the Yuan family can chase me to the Hidden Valley? At that time, I will let the world judge how righteous your Yuan family is in this matter." Yi Shiwen's tone was extremely angry. The Yuan family was simply pestering endlessly. Now, this plan seemed to be able to solve all the problems, but it was based on an unequal relationship. This matter itself was the Yuan family's fault. Why did Yi Shiwen have to accept their conditions? If they said to fight again, then they would do it again. The initiative was completely in the hands of the Yuan family. Qin Lai's face also showed a somewhat tangled and embarrassed expression. He naturally knew very well that this matter was indeed somewhat unreasonable. However, within the martial sect, the Yuan family was pressuring them step by step. It was like a volcanic eruption, especially since the Yuan family's ancestor was one of the group of people who followed Emperor Qin to conquer the world. His prestige was so high that there were not many people in the current martial sect who could be compared to him. The real trouble was this old man who had always followed Emperor Qin's habit of shielding his own people. This was even when they were not in the right. If they were in the right, it would be terrible. Because you have no choice. Suddenly, a majestic voice suddenly came into the minds of the two people. A vague figure suddenly broke into the palace. "Deputy Sovereign." Qin Lai quickly stood up from his seat and said while cupping his hands. Although he had already proven his Tao, when faced with such a big character, whether it was in terms of strength or experience, he was still far from it. Yi Shiwen suddenly stood up and his face immediately became gloomy. Entering without permission. Is this the Yuan family's style of doing things? Yi Shiwen could not help but sneer and said, "There is no place in the world that can stop me if I want to go. This includes your Hidden Valley," the vague figure said. Yi Shiwen's brows slightly wrinkled and said, "Isn't your Yuan family a bit too overbearing? Don't tell me that your Yuan family is in the right in this matter. You have the strength, so you can also be overbearing," the vague figure said. "Do you think you can walk out of here alive if we are in the right? You can't scare me even if you bring up the Flame Lord. You don't need to worry. After this matter, no one will mention this matter no matter who wins or loses. Moreover, I will also give you an opportunity that you will certainly want. Yishuan glanced at the vague figure and asked, "What are you trying to say?" "I heard from Qin Lai that you are entangled with that girl called Hua Minghan," the vague figure said. Yishuan suddenly looked at Qin Lai and saw that Qin Lai was also looking at Yishuan with a bitter smile on his face. Then, Qin Lai said, "This matter is also for your own good. You don't need to look at him. Do you know that the ancient Phoenix realm is currently looking for a son-in-law for Hua Minghan?" The vague figure said, "Looking for a son-in-law again?" Yishuan suddenly stood up straight. His eyes were wide open in anger. The last time was when they were looking for a son-in-law for Hua Minghan. It had attracted a lot of trouble, and it had ended with Hua Minghan's escape. This matter had caused many big shots of the ancient Phoenix realm to lose face. Many people had chased after Hua Minghan to kill her. However, wasn't this matter already over? How come it has appeared again? Yishuan's entire body suddenly tensed up. He had thought of a dreadful conclusion. Could it be that she had fallen into the hands of the ancient Phoenix realm after she had gone missing? It would be a big trouble if that was the case. Impossible. The Phoenix King is Hua Minghan's master. He would have done it the last time if he wanted to threaten her. Why would he wait until now? Yishuan shook his head and said, "What if I tell you that the Phoenix King has fallen?" The vague figure suddenly said, "What? How is this possible?" Yishuan cried out involuntarily. He had lost control of his state of mind at this time. What kind of person was the Phoenix King? He wasn't as simple as he had initially thought. He was the lord of the ancient Phoenix realm. He was one of the top experts in the entire heavens. He had lived for countless years. So, how could he have fallen? It's useless even if you don't want to believe it. The vague figure said, "This is the truth. The Phoenix King isn't the only one. The ancient Phoenix realm has also lost countless experts. Their vitality has been greatly damaged. So, they're only looking for a son-in-law among the major forces in order to form an alliance with them. The Martial Great Sect also has several quotas, and one of them is in the hands of my Yuan clan. Everything will end if you lose. But this quota will be yours if you win." Chapter 2356. Qin Lai smiled bitterly as he looked at the vague figure. His tone was unyielding. This was obviously a mutually beneficial deal. How did it become so unpleasant and overbearing when it came out of his mouth? It was not that the Yuan family could not distinguish right from wrong. Although the martial sect was big, it was not rotten to such an extent. It was just that senior immortal Yuan Miao's position in the enemy family was quite special. She was the direct descendant of the old man. She was talented and intelligent. She was considered the pillar of the Yuan family's middle generation. Now, because of her son's matter, a demon had been born in her heart. If she could not get rid of this demon, her future achievements would probably be like this. In order to solve this problem, she decided to have another fight with Yishuan. However, Yishuan was not a soft persimmon that could be easily bullied. He had the huge force of the Hidden Valley behind him. Therefore, he planned to complete this deal. Regardless of the outcome, Yishuan would obtain the Yuan family's quota. Presumably, Yishuan was also willing. However, the words coming out of the old man's mouth had become so stiff and unpleasant. He could already see how ugly Yishuan's face was. Yishuan's face was ugly. Being forced by the Yuan family's old ancestor was only one of the reasons. What made him even more furious was that the ancient Phoenix realm actually used Hua Minghan as a bargaining chip to rope in allies. What a good plan. What shocked him even more was that one of the world's top experts, the Phoenix King, had died tragically. Countless elites had died tragically. The ancient Phoenix realm had suffered heavy losses. Although he did not know the extent of the ancient Phoenix realm, he could more or less speculate that they must use marriage to rope in allies. The ancient Phoenix realm must have suffered a great loss. Hua Minghan's whereabouts were unknown after she was injured by the Heavenly Fox young master, Junding Tian. Yishuan had no news of her. He did not expect that she had fallen into the hands of the ancient Phoenix realm. His heart was burning with anxiety. He could not wait to fly directly to the ancient Phoenix realm. At this moment, the Mingxin ancient tree in his body emitted bursts of seven-colored light. It illuminated his sea of consciousness and made him calm down instantly. After weighing the pros and cons, he finally said after a long while, "All right, I agree to this duel." Regardless of the outcome, the grudges between Gao Qinye and the Yuan family will be written off. How about it? In the end, his rationality still suppressed the anger in his heart. Although the Yuan family was overbearing, he did not lose out no matter what. If the grudge between Gao Qinye and the Yuan family was not settled, he would not be at ease leaving him in the heaven realm. Even with Qin Lai's protection, they could not stop the Yuan family from secretly playing dirty tricks. Since they had this opportunity, they should seize it, especially the quota to participate in the ancient Phoenix realm selection. He was determined to get it. He had no other choice. Hua Menghan was his woman. He couldn't let her fall into the hands of others. All in all, agreeing to it would naturally be greatly beneficial for him. However, the attitude and tone of the Yuan family's great ancestor had enraged him greatly. However, he was no longer a greenhorn, so he could still distinguish the severity of the situation. In his heart, he had an even greater desire for strength. Only by improving his strength could he stand shoulder to shoulder with the Yuan family's great ancestor. If he could stand shoulder to shoulder with the Yuan family's great ancestor, would he still dare to force Hua Menghan to the point where she had to go through a second marriage? All right, if that's the case, you can just make a trip to the heaven realm after 20 years. The quota will naturally be yours then. After the vague figure finished speaking, it slowly dissipated in the sky. Qin Lai looked at Yi Shiwen awkwardly. The Yuan family's great ancestor always stirred things up. As the mediator in the middle, he seemed particularly embarrassed. Fortunately, Yi Shiwen had already calmed down at this time. He could distinguish between right and wrong. He opened his mouth and said, "Qin Lai, you don't have to be embarrassed. I've thought about it. This matter is indeed for my own good. I didn't know what's good for me just now." Seeing that Yi Shiwen did not use this opportunity to flip out, Qin Lai reluctantly heaved a sigh of relief. This time, he was really like a pig looking in the mirror. In any case, I appreciate your kindness for being able to mediate. I owe you a favor. If there's a chance in the future, I'll definitely repay you generously. However, I still need you to take care of the Holy Palace in the Heaven Realm in the future. Yi Shiwen said while cupping his hands. This is just a trivial matter. You don't have to worry about it. Just leave it all to me. Seeing that Yi Shiwen was not angry, Qin Lai quickly took over the matter. This was just a trivial matter. Soon, the Yuan family sent a letter of challenge. For a time, the person standing behind the Holy Palace became the object of countless people's speculation. 20 years later, the battle at the martial sect. This battle became the focus of many people's attention. Although it had been 20 years for many big shots, 20 years was nothing at all. Venerable immortal Yuan Miao was famous in the heaven realm. Although she was a woman, she was not inferior at all. She had established a boundless prestige. Such a fairy actually challenged Yi Shiwen to a battle. What kind of person was Yi Shiwen? Many people suddenly remembered that 200 years ago, there was indeed a battle where the dignified, venerable, immortal Yuan Miao was defeated. However, after that, the person involved, Yi Shiwen, was extremely low-key. The martial sect also tried to deal with this matter as low-key as possible. So many people have forgotten about this matter. But now, with this letter of challenge, this matter reappeared in everyone's sight and memory. The matter that there was a big shot behind the Holy Palace was even more heated. It was just that it was originally a speculation of some people, but now the speculation had become a reality. Venerable immortal Yuan Miao personally came to send a letter of challenge. One could imagine that she was at least at the same level as venerable immortal Yuan Miao. At the very least, she was in existence above the immortal realm, with the support of an undying being. Although the pilgrimage palace had only just been established, it already had the shadow of an undying legacy. The most important thing was that it already had the foundation. Therefore, as the contents of the duel were made public, many people who had looked down on the pilgrimage palace no longer dared to look down on it. It was almost as if they were treating the pilgrimage palace as an undying legacy. At this time, Yi Shiwen was no longer in the heaven realm. He had quietly rushed to the ancient Phoenix realm. Although he had already reserved the Yuan clan's quota, he still wanted to try and see if he could take Hua Minghan away during the chaos. As for how angry the ancient Phoenix realm was, he could no longer care. At worst, he would escape back to the hidden valley and temporarily avoid the brunt. Moreover, he had a good reason to do this. Back then, he was the champion of Hua Minghan's marriage search. In other words, he was already Hua Minghan's husband. No matter what, he had a reason to go to the ancient Phoenix realm. The ancient Phoenix realm was also a very large world among the myriad realms. Compared to the last time he came here, Yi Shiwen's breakthrough was much smoother. He opened the Eye of Redemption and discovered that it was completely different from the last time he came to the ancient Phoenix realm. At that time, his cultivation was limited, so he could not see many places. Now that he was on the righteous path and was one of the few people in the world, he could see many secret areas hidden by the ancient Phoenix realm's array. The ancient Phoenix realm was several times bigger than the ancient Phoenix realm, which was known to the outsiders. In fact, it wasn't inferior to the Tool Emperor's heaven. Yi Shiwen finally understood why the ancient Phoenix realm was one of the few huge realms in the myriad heavens. He couldn't help but feel a chill on his back as he thought of this. He had foiled the plans of some big shots of the ancient Phoenix realm at that time, and he had been able to leave the ancient Phoenix realm safely. Perhaps it was just as the Phoenix King had said. Those people who had chased after Hua Minghan seemed to have gone all out at that time. However, it now seemed that the rumors were true. They were only playing around. Or it could be said that they were just playing around. Hua Minghan wouldn't have been able to escape with her cultivation if they had attacked her. As far as Hua Minghan was concerned, the Phoenix King wasn't only her master, but also her greatest protector. As long as the Phoenix King was alive, no one would dare to touch her. Even the other forces wouldn't dare to make a move against Hua Minghan in order to avoid incurring the wrath of the Phoenix King. No one had thought that the Phoenix King would be defeated so easily. Hua Minghan's status in the ancient Phoenix realm had plummeted. She had even been used as a sacrifice. Yi Shiwen could even imagine what those people were thinking. First, her status was high enough. She was the beloved disciple of the former Phoenix King. Second, the Phoenix King had died. So, no one could protect her anymore. She was nothing but a puppet that could be manipulated by others. Yi Shiwen could imagine that Hua Minghan's current life must be very difficult. He wasn't willing to wait for even one more day since he had news of her. He passed through the exposed parts of the ancient Phoenix realm and entered the hidden world. It was very vast. He opened his eyes of redemption and used the power of redemption. He was barely able to see everything clearly. It was very vast. Even an island in many places was as big as a continent. The strength of the ancient Phoenix realm was unimaginably huge in this place. However, every family was wearing mourning clothes along the way. White sacrificial items could be seen everywhere. He looked as far as the eye could see. It seemed as if the entire region of the ancient Phoenix realm had been covered. One could well imagine how big the loss of the ancient Phoenix realm had been this time. It wouldn't be an exaggeration to say that their vitality had been greatly damaged. He opened his eyes of redemption and saw the formation of countless telekinetic powers in the sky. They had been formed by the tears of the families and forces that had lost their loved ones and masters. However, this didn't have anything to do with him. He was more concerned about Hua Minghan's whereabouts. He concealed his figure as he advanced forward. He entered the hidden world of the ancient Phoenix world. It was the most central region. He landed in one of the flourishing cities. He wanted to inquire about Hua Minghan's whereabouts. After all, this was the best place to do so in this big city. He entered a restaurant after he entered the city. He found a seat and sat down. He casually ordered a few dishes and lay down. Chapter 2357. This city was located in the most central area of the ancient Phoenix world. It was very bustling with people coming and going. Almost every race could be seen here. However, the only difference was that all of these people had the bloodline of the Phoenix race. The bloodline of the Phoenix race wasn't inferior compared to the lascivious dragon race. It could be found in every race. These people could be regarded as subspecies of the Phoenix race. As long as the impurities in their bloodline could be eliminated, they could directly become a pure-blooded phoenix. Yi Shiwen casually ordered a few dishes, and they were soon served. These dishes couldn't be eaten in many worlds because the ingredients used were very particular. They were very rare, so the price was naturally not cheap. However, Yi Shiwen still had some money even though his net worth had been depleted. It wasn't a huge amount. At a glance, some of the private rooms were simply separated worlds. The technology of space had been used here. It could be seen that the richness of the ancient Phoenix realm was far beyond the imagination of ordinary people. Profound realm experts could be seen everywhere. Profound realm experts that were considered experts in other places were nothing in this place. Compared to the ancient Phoenix realm, this place was much more powerful. The ancient Phoenix world's heritage was indeed much deeper than he had imagined. It was a race that had dominated the heavens countless years ago. It wasn't simple at all. The other worlds simply couldn't catch up to it. However, this made Yi Shiwen feel even more strange. The ancient Phoenix world should have a lot of Tao-confirming experts with its strength. So, who could inflict such heavy damage on the ancient Phoenix world? He directly called a waiter over. He took out a profound tool and threw it into the waiter's hand. Then he asked, "I've just come out of closed-door training. So, there are many things I don't know. What's going on? Why are all the families suddenly in mourning?" That waiter was just a junior who had just entered the mysterious realm. He didn't even have a profound tool in his hands. But he had suddenly obtained one now. It wasn't the best quality one could offer. However, it was enough for him. It was a pleasant surprise. His expression immediately became respectful. It was as if he had already regarded Yi Shiwen as a rich senior. As for closed-door training, it was very normal. Warriors and cultivators were like this. A closed-door training could last for hundreds of years. "Senior, that's right." The waiter looked at Yi Shiwen. Then he looked around and cautiously said, "It seems that Her Highness the Phoenix King has brought a large number of experts into the God Burial Star Ocean. Some rumors say that they have found the tomb of the Phoenix Ancestor. The Phoenix Ancestor was invincible in the world in those days. She was also the only Emperor level expert of our race." How important do you think it would be if we could find the inheritance of the Phoenix Ancestor? Perhaps the Phoenix King might even become the Phoenix Emperor. Hiss! Yi Shiwen was secretly surprised. He was actually looking for the tomb of an Emperor Lord level master. He naturally knew about Emperor Lord level masters. They were invincible. Unless they were experts of the same realm, it would be difficult for them to meet a worthy opponent. Gods were nothing in front of an Emperor Lord. The reason why the ancient Phoenix realm was able to prosper for a period of time and dominate the world was because of the supreme might of the Phoenix Ancestor as a monarch. It was no wonder that the Phoenix King had mobilized a large number of experts to explore it. Then how did they all die? I heard that they suffered heavy losses. What's going on? Yi Shiwen asked. It's not just heavy losses. It's too tragic. Many Tao-confirming experts have died. We don't know the specific number. It's a secret. Countless demigods have died. I'm afraid that this loss can't be made up for tens of thousands of years. The waiter said carefully. He didn't want others to notice. This situation was much more serious than what Yi Shiwen had expected. Yi Shiwen didn't care about life and death. He continued to ask. Logically speaking, the Phoenix King personally led the team. Who in the world could pose such a threat to the Phoenix King? With the help of so many experts, even if the king-level forces turned out in full strength, they wouldn't be able to stop them. That's right. Who knew that not even 1/10 of them could escape at that time? It's said that they were ambushed by the remnants of the heavenly race. The Phoenix King fought to the death in order to cover the escape of the other clansmen. The waiter said. He carefully looked around and then quietly said, "It said that there was a traitor who leaked the information. So, the heavenly race caught them red-handed. It seems that the heavenly race dispatched several king-level experts to besiege the Phoenix King. Eventually, the Phoenix King killed one of them. However, this news is just a rumor. Nobody knows about it. How can a small character like us know about the matters of the upper echelons?" Hiss, there are still remnants of the heavenly race. Yi Shiwen sucked in a breath of cold air. He was no longer the same as before. In fact, he had read a large number of handwritten notes left in the hidden valley before this. Although he had read a large number of handwritten notes of the predecessors in order to attain the Tao back then, some of the handwritten notes mentioned the heavenly race. However, those were the handwritten notes left by the seniors in the distant past. It was so distant that it was almost before the establishment of the Hidden Valley. In fact, many of the records in the handwritten notes of those seniors were left behind in the form of legends. As everyone knew, the dragon race, the phoenix race, and the Qilin had once ruled the myriad worlds in the distant past. The three races fought endlessly. However, there was a race that was above the three races at that time. It was the heavenly race. This race claimed to rule the myriad worlds on behalf of the heavens. Therefore, they called themselves the heavenly race. The people of the heavenly race were born to be powerful experts. There were countless experts in the race. Even the dragon race, the phoenix race, and the Qilin were suppressed. Under the control and instigation of the people of the heavenly race, a war broke out between the dragon race, the phoenix race, and the Qilin. At the last moment, the heavenly race intervened and started a war against the three races at the same time. In the end, the three races resisted and formed an allied army. There were countless casualties. Even the Emperor Kings fell. In the end, the heavenly race was exiled to the distant outer domain. In that battle, there were countless casualties on both sides. Corpses were everywhere. Because many of them were Tao corroboration experts, they had undying attributes existing for countless years. This battlefield had existed for countless years. This was the god burial star ocean. Because it was known as the place where the gods were buried, it was incomparably dangerous. Even the gods wouldn't dare to say that they would be able to come out safely after entering. After that, the dragon race, the phoenix race, and the Qilin withdrew from the struggle for hegemony. The dragon race defended the Dragon Island, and the phoenix race returned to the ancient phoenix world. After that, without the suppression of the dragon race, the demon race, the human race, and other powerful races rose one after another. After experiencing that terrifying war, the luck of the various races also exploded. Countless experts emerged one after another. In order to fight for the position of the overlord of the world, they fought again. At this time, the seal left by the dragon race, the phoenix race, and the Qilin loosened for some reason. The heavenly race returned from the distant outer domain. Under such circumstances, the races of the myriad worlds once again formed an allied army to resist the heavens. When the Second War broke out, the various races suffered heavy casualties. The Tao confirming experts died one after another. The Emperor King level experts also died in battle one after another. It was said that the Emperor King level experts in the heavenly race were more than all the other races combined. In the end, the experts of the various races used endless casualties as blood sacrifices to barely manage to exile the heavenly race to the distant outer domain. The battlefield was in the god burial star sea during the first war against the heavens. This time, the casualties were more than the first time. This made the god burial star sea a terrifying place that could really bury the gods. However, at the same time, the god burial star sea was also a place that countless people yearned for. It was possible to obtain the inheritance of a god at any time and soar to the sky. Compared to the god burial star sea, the divine tomb in the true martial world was simply insignificant. It was on a completely different level. The main direction of exploration of the various races was also the god burial star sea. If they could obtain anything there, it would be a worthwhile trip. This was also the fundamental reason why there were not even god-level experts in many worlds. Those experts were either hiding in seclusion or entering the god burial star sea. Although the god burial star sea was dangerous, there were also countless hidden opportunities. A fortuitous encounter could allow their cultivation to advance by leaps and bounds after thousands or tens of thousands of years. However, he had never paid much attention to it. The god burial star sea was too far away for him. As for the heavenly race, it was even more out of reach. The senior's personal letter didn't mention much about it. In his opinion, Since the heavenly race should have been exiled, it should have ceased to exist. Who would have thought that it would still exist? Moreover, it had caused such a big commotion. Yes, I also thought that the heavenly race didn't exist. I had only heard of this name from my ancestors. If it wasn't for this sudden incident, I wouldn't have known that the heavenly race still had such a powerful remnant. The waiter scratched his head. Obviously, it was a bit difficult for a person of his level to understand the heavenly race. Yi Shiwen calmed his mood. The matter of the heavenly race was shocking. However, it was a very distant matter. What he was really concerned about was Hua Menghan. I heard that the Phoenix King's adopted daughter, Hua Menghan, has been locked up, he said calmly. Yes, I've also heard about this matter. It seems that she has been locked up in the heavenly Phoenix Lake. Sigh. A fallen phoenix is inferior to a chicken. Who dared to underestimate her when the Phoenix King was still in power? She was only an adopted daughter. However, who didn't know that she was the Phoenix King's beloved disciple? In fact, she was even better than his own child. The Phoenix King didn't say anything when she ran away from the marriage. However, the Phoenix King has just fallen, and she has been pushed out to make peace with the marriage. It's true that the tea cools when the person is gone. The waiter suddenly stopped talking. He seemed to have realized that he had said too many things that he shouldn't have said. The heavenly Phoenix Lake. Yi Shiwen firmly remembered this place. He must find a way to find the heavenly Phoenix Lake. Just as he was thinking about how to find the heavenly Phoenix Lake, there was a sudden commotion outside. In the sky, there was a violent sound of something tearing through the air. A luxurious carriage appeared in the sky above the city. Chapter 2358. The carriage was only the size of an ordinary carriage, but it was decorated with magnificent gold and jade. It looked luxurious and grand. There were 9 ominous beasts pulling the carriage in front of the carriage, indicating the extraordinary status of the person who had just arrived. The roars of various ominous beasts shook the vast sky. Each of them had the aura of the abyss of destruction. The law of destruction lingered on their bodies. It was extremely terrifying. Who is this person? How awe-inspiring. Someone asked. Look at the insignia on the carriage. It should be the people of the Dragon Island. Someone recognized the insignia on the carriage. I'm afraid he's not a nobody. These should be the abyss destruction beasts of the god burial star ocean. These abyss destruction beasts are ominous beasts that are born from the law of destruction. They are so powerful that they can even challenge the gods. They are a great threat to the people who have just entered the god burial star ocean. This person can actually use the abyss destruction beast to pull the carriage. He's certainly not a nobody. Someone analyzed and said, I remember now. Didn't the people of the Dragon Island send someone to discuss the matter of the alliance between the 2 clans? If we can facilitate the alliance between the Dragon and Phoenix clans, then there's no need for the martial arts competition to select a son-in-law. There's no need for that step. Although the Dragon Island has been competing with us for many years, they are indeed very powerful. If we can win over such a powerful dream traveler at this time, then it will be very significant for us. Someone suddenly said. Yi Shiwen's eyes suddenly flickered. If the Dragon Island succeeded, then it would be terrible. They wouldn't even be able to wait for the martial arts competition to select a son-in-law. No, I can't let them succeed. Damn old man. Yi Shiwen gritted his teeth and said in a low voice. In order to achieve their goal, they had pushed Hua Menghan as a sacrifice. But hasn't the Dragon Island always wanted us to die? Why are they so active in forming an alliance with us this time? Could it be that they have some conspiracy? Someone asked in reply. The Dragon Island, which had always been indifferent, had suddenly become enthusiastic. This had made many people puzzled. Someone pretended to be confident and said, I don't know if there are other conspiracies, but the Dragon Island has always wanted to create the strongest physique and bloodline. Hua Menghan has the heavenly phoenix body. If Yi Shiwen hadn't disrupted the last selection, then perhaps they would have succeeded. They have never given up on the idea of creating the strongest physique and bloodline. Therefore, the Dragon Island has just released the news, and the Dragon Island has already arrived. Everyone suddenly understood. They didn't expect the Dragon Island to have such an idea. The heavenly phoenix body was the strongest bloodline of the Phoenix clan. However, the Dragon clan had suffered heavy losses in the past. On the other hand, the strongest bloodline of the Dragon clan was still present. If the two were to combine, it might really be possible to create the strongest bloodline. The Dragon tribe and the Phoenix tribe were very arrogant tribes to begin with. Only a few tribes were able to gain their approval, and among them, only a few could be considered as having the strongest bloodlines. Yishuan naturally knew that he couldn't let them continue. Otherwise, the consequences would be unimaginable once the matter was confirmed. In the midst of the lively discussion, none of them noticed that one of the guests had already disappeared into the void without a sound. The news that the Dragon Island had sent someone to propose marriage had spread out very quickly. It had shaken the entire ancient Phoenix world. The betrothal gift that the Dragon Island had sent had also spread out very quickly. It was a dragon's breath stone. This dragon's breath stone had the meaning of a giant dragon's breath. A giant dragon's breath could gather countless amounts of spirit energy within it as it inhaled and exhaled. No one knew how much spirit energy it had gathered over the past countless years. However, it could be said that it could subtly transform the wearer's body into a tyrannical giant dragon's physique. Moreover, the wearer's cultivation speed would increase by more than 50%. It was said that this was only the down payment in the betrothal gift. Even in the ancient Phoenix realm, a magic tool of this level was extremely rare. It could even increase the cultivation of the gods by more than half. What a terrifying magic tool this was. It was said that it was the pendant that the ancestral dragon wore all those years ago. It had always been the clan treasure of the Dragon Island. Now that they actually gave it away, it was obvious how determined they were. However, one could imagine that Hua Menghan would marry into the Dragon Island in the future. When that time came, it would be equivalent to returning to the hands of the Dragon Island. This was indeed a good plan. Even so, the Dragon Island could be considered to be very generous this time. Moreover, other betrothal gifts would also be sent as long as the ancient Phoenix realm agreed. It wouldn't be just this. This wasn't just a marriage between two people. It was also an alliance between the two races. The benefits that this would represent would be quite astonishing. Soon, the news spread out. Both parties had a very pleasant discussion this time. In fact, it was possible that they would directly bypass the martial arts competition and directly marry into the Dragon Island. "I won't marry," Hua Menghan said with a solemn expression in a big hall. She was clad in white clothes. Her long skirt was fluttering in the wind. She looked a little thin. Her eyes were cold and detached. "This matter isn't up to you. The Phoenix King had been very good to you in the past. He had even tolerated your escape from the marriage. Now that the Phoenix King has fallen, the ancient Phoenix realm has fallen into an unprecedented crisis. As the adopted daughter of the Phoenix King, shouldn't you stand up and save the ancient Phoenix realm?" A middle-aged man stood in front of Hua Menghan. He had a pleasant temperament. He looked at Hua Menghan with a sneer on his face as he spoke. There was a hint of pleasure in his eyes. He had made Hua Menghan escape from the marriage last time. She wasn't willing to marry his son. She had made him lose face. Now let's see what other choice she has. "Feng Nantian, the Phoenix King has just passed away not too long ago. You're going too far by doing this." A black-clothed old man opened his turbid eyes behind Hua Menghan and looked at Feng Nantian as he spoke. It seemed that the ancient Phoenix realm wasn't ruled by a single person. There were also many people who objected to this matter. The middle-aged man, Feng Nantian, glanced at the black-clothed old man. Then he said, "Old man, you're very clear about the current situation of the ancient Phoenix realm. The Phoenix King had rashly led his people to the god Burial Star Ocean. This had led to irreparable consequences. We're only cleaning up the aftermath of the Phoenix King's death. You don't understand our painstaking efforts and don't care about it. However, what you've said is somewhat offensive." "Feng Nantian, would you have dared to say this in front of my adoptive father when he was alive?" Hua Menghan angrily said, "You haven't become the patriarch yet. Yet, you want to arrange my affairs?" "Hua Menghan, you have to agree to this matter even if you don't want to. You don't have any other choice." Feng Nantian's complexion changed as he said, "You're impolite. You're impolite in front of your elders. It seems that the Phoenix King has spoiled you. You don't have any other choice in this matter. You can't do anything even if you don't agree. Do you think you can prove your Tao without our ancient Phoenix realm? You only want to take advantage of us. You don't want to pay anything. How can it be so simple? Feng Nantian. The prestige of the Phoenix clan has always been established through the use of a blade and a spear. I've never heard that a marriage alliance can make the Phoenix clan stronger. Old Man Gu solemnly said, the current situation is different from countless years ago. We don't have a powerful ally. It's very likely that we'll attract the attention of some thieves and thieves. Do you want countless disciples to sacrifice their lives in vain? Feng Nanshan's words stopped Old Man Gu. No one dared to say this. Otherwise, the public opinion would have been turbulent. He looked at Hua Minghan and said, you're still thinking about that wild man Yi Shiwen. Do you think he can save you? Are you kidding me? The alliance between the Dragon and Phoenix clan is inevitable. No one could stop it. Hua Minghan bit her lower lip. Her eyes were filled with hatred. However, she didn't have any other way. Her cultivation had been imprisoned, so she had no other way. She had indeed been rescued by the Phoenix King after she had been seriously injured. He had been paying close attention to her. So, she had been cultivating in the ancient Phoenix realm during this period of time. However, she hadn't expected that she would receive such shocking news as soon as she came out of her closed-door training. The Phoenix King had been like a loving father to her. He had fallen in the God Burial Star Sea. This had diluted the joy of proving her Tao. Now her cultivation had been imprisoned. So, she could only be at the mercy of others. Where are you? Only a cyan figure was left in her mind. Soon, this news had spread far and wide. It had even spread to the ancient Phoenix realm. All the major forces had people in the ancient Phoenix realm. Now, the ancient Phoenix realm and the Dragon Island wanted to form an alliance. This was undoubtedly a huge matter. A fallen phoenix was inferior to a chicken. However, a skinny camel was still bigger than a horse. The ancient Phoenix realm was still more tyrannical than many kings' sects, no matter how much it had declined. The alliance of these two colossi had made many kings' sects feel restless, especially when the remnant of the heavenly race had suddenly appeared. This was a sensitive period, so everyone was paying close attention to this matter. This matter had rapidly fermented after the Dragon Island had proposed marriage. The commotion had become bigger and bigger. Originally, the ancient Phoenix realm had only sent invitations to some king sections. Only the higher-ups had known about this news. Most people weren't aware of this. But the news had suddenly erupted with the Dragon Island's proposal. It had erupted like a volcano. Everyone was waiting to see how the situation would develop. Why is Hua Minghan holding a marriage competition again? Didn't she already hold a marriage competition before, if I remember correctly? Many people still remembered the name of the Heavenly Phoenix Maiden, even though it had happened several hundred years ago. However, Hua Minghan had run away from her marriage at that time. So, she's going to hold a marriage competition again now. However, Yi Shiwen was the final champion of the marriage competition, if I remember correctly. Moreover, wasn't there a rumor that they were a couple? So, how did this happen? Many people still remembered that Yi Shiwen and Hua Minghan had joined hands to destroy the ancient Phoenix Realm's marriage competition. It had left a deep impression on them. Chapter 2359. Many people were dumbfounded. They didn't know why Hua Minghan had to participate in the martial arts competition to find a husband. Could it be that the ancient Phoenix Realm couldn't find anyone else? Especially since Hua Minghan already had a nominal husband. Hua Minghan had escaped the marriage. However, everyone knew that she and Yi Shiwen were a couple. Even Yi Shiwen's name, which had been forgotten by many people, had gradually started to be recalled by more and more people. Isn't this a slap in the face? They don't care about Yi Shiwen at all. Can Yi Shiwen endure this? Someone couldn't help but ridicule. These people were legendary figures for them. They had nothing to do with them in any case. They just wanted to watch a good show. The major forces saw the possibility of the union between the ancient Phoenix Realm and the Dragon Island. One must know that these two forces were the overlords of the world in the distant past. Everyone had a terrifying background. No one knew how much strength they had yet to reveal. Now that they had joined forces, many people were worried even though the ancient Phoenix realm had suffered heavy losses. The ancient Phoenix realm had suffered heavy losses. So, it was impossible for them to be on equal footing with the Dragon Island in the Alliance. Basically, they had to follow the Dragon Island's lead. Wouldn't the Dragon Island's strength increase greatly after obtaining such a strong ally? This was the problem that everyone was worried about. They would be above the other forces when the time came. Ordinary people only focused a small part of their attention on this matter. They were more concerned about whether Yi Shiwen would come. Would he come to demand an explanation for them? A fierce conflict would certainly break out between the ancient Phoenix realm and the Dragon Island if he came. Perhaps they wouldn't have the face to see anyone in the future if he didn't come. Will the ancient Phoenix realm choose to get engaged with the Dragon Island? That's not necessarily the case. I'm afraid there are many people who are qualified to form an alliance with the ancient Phoenix realm. It's not necessarily an engagement. However, more and more people will be interested in this matter as long as this news is released. Those forces who originally weren't interested in forming an alliance with the ancient Phoenix realm won't let go of this opportunity in order to prevent the Dragon Island from forming an alliance with the ancient Phoenix realm. Many people had guessed the thoughts of those major forces. It would be very difficult to form an alliance under normal circumstances. After all, how could the ancient Phoenix realm be willing to be under someone else if their strength hadn't been damaged? But now, things were different. Whoever could form an alliance with the ancient Phoenix realm would gain another helping hand. Therefore, even the titled King sects, who weren't originally interested, wouldn't easily let go of this opportunity. Similarly, the ancient Phoenix realm would have more options after the news had been released. They wouldn't necessarily have to hang themselves on the Dragon Island. It was definitely a good idea to kill several birds with one stone. I'm afraid that things will get more and more intense when that time comes. However, we'll have to see how determined the Dragon Island is to form an alliance this time. If they are willing to give up some benefits, it won't be difficult to rope in the current ancient Phoenix realm. Yes, it is said that the Dragon Island has always wanted to create the strongest bloodline of the dragon and the phoenix. They want to dominate the world. Now, Hua Menghan is the only person who has the heavenly phoenix body in the ancient phoenix world. So, the Dragon Island is determined to get her. However, it depends on how many benefits they are willing to give up. Everyone was discussing the benefits of the union between the two of them. As for Hua Menghan's opinion, it had already been forgotten by everyone. Hua Menghan's status in the ancient Phoenix world had plummeted without the support of the Phoenix King. She had already lost her right to speak. Who has the Dragon Island come to propose marriage for? Someone asked out of curiosity. It seems to be A.O. Chaozong. He's the youngest elder of the Dragon Island. It is said that his cultivation had already reached an incredible level a long time ago. The one who has come to propose marriage is his father, A.O. Dongxing. It's that guy. He's known as the peerless genius of the dragon race that appears once every 10,000 years. He should have confirmed his cultivation a few thousand years ago, if I'm not mistaken. It is said that his cultivation is comparable to those old monsters. It's hard to imagine. If that's the case, then they're truly a talented man and a beautiful woman. The strongest genius of the dragon race and the celestial phoenix lady of the phoenix race both have noble bloodlines and formidable strength. It is said that the celestial phoenix lady has also confirmed her cultivation. So, she's definitely a good match for A.O. Chaozong. Someone sighed with emotion and said, "One must know that Hua Menghan had confirmed her cultivation at such a young age. There weren't many people in the ancient Phoenix world. She was a peerless Heaven's Pride expert. However, she had received an evaluation that she was only a good match for A.O. Chaozong. One could well imagine how terrifying and powerful A.O. Chaozong was in everyone's hearts. So, will Yi Shiwen come or not? If his opponent is A.O. Chaozong, I'm afraid that it'll be difficult for him to defeat A.O. Chaozong in the martial arts competition in the future, even if he doesn't succeed now. Sigh. I'm afraid that we're not fated to be together." At this time, Yi Shiwen was sitting on the ground in a cave outside the city. His body was burning with boundless flames. It seemed to be burning away the impurities in his body. He was undergoing a shocking transformation. He had already set up a formation. He knew that the odds of success were not high if he went to the heavenly Phoenix Lake at this time. Even if the ancient Phoenix world had suffered a great loss, it was still more tyrannical than the ordinary regal sections. Moreover, the Dragon Island was involved in this matter, which made this matter countless times more complicated. However, he had no other choice. Hua Menghan was his woman. If he couldn't even protect his own woman, then how could he cultivate in the future? It would only leave an indelible shadow in his heart in the future. However, he had to be fully prepared before he went to disrupt the marriage proposal of the Dragon Island. His combat strength would go up another level when he broke through to the middle of the immortal level. His strength would increase tremendously, and he would be more confident. Even if he couldn't take Hua Menghan away, he would still mess up this engagement and retreat unscathed. Just when Yi Shiwen was cultivating in seclusion, there was a big change in the situation. After the news spread, many people were still waiting to see what would happen. A piece of news came. The new demon god, Yi Wudi, sent someone to send a letter of greeting and personally went to visit the ancient Phoenix world. Could it be that he wants to get involved and fight for Hua Menghan as well? Many people were stunned after hearing the news. They had no words to describe the feeling of shock in their hearts. Ao Chaozong was the most powerful genius of the Dragon Island in the past 10,000 years. He had proven his Tao for thousands of years, and his cultivation had reached an unbelievable level. Many of the experts of the older generation of the Dragon Island admitted that they were no match for him. However, Yi Wudi was also a legend in recent years. Before he had proven his Tao, he had already traveled in the God Burial Star Ocean. Later on, before he had proven his Tao, he had even killed a god. Now that he had proven his Tao, his cultivation was also unbelievably high. More importantly, Yi Wudi represented a supreme inheritance of the demon race. It was said that the ancient heavenly court had declined a long time ago. Long before the dragons, phoenixes, and Qilins had withdrawn from the struggle for the hegemony of the world, and before the demon race and the human race had risen, it was the demon race that ruled the universe. They established the Heaven Court to manage the universe. With the name of the Heavenly Court, one could imagine how powerful this force was. After many twists and turns, it was said that it had disappeared a long time ago. However, when Yi Wudi went to the God Burial Star Ocean, he claimed that he was the successor of the ancient Heavenly Court. However, people didn't pay much attention to it at first. Let's not talk about whether it was a fake or not. Even if it was true, the ancient Heavenly Court had declined a long time ago. After so many years, there was no news of anyone surviving. Even if he didn't know where he had obtained the inheritance of the ancient Heavenly Court, he was still far from being able to scare people with a tiger's skin. But soon, after he announced the name of the ancient Heavenly Court, many powerful tribes announced their return to the banner of the ancient Heavenly Court. There were great demons that dominated the God Burial Star Ocean, and there were also powerful tribes that ruled many worlds. They all publicly surrendered to the ancient Heavenly Court. Many people were shocked. Some demon tribes and ancient great demons that didn't seem to have any connection were actually subordinates of the ancient Heavenly Court. They were clearly just hiding, but there were still extremely powerful forces among them. With Yi Wudi's appearance, these forces all surfaced. Now, behind Yi Wudi, there was also a huge force. The ancient Heavenly Court was not just a symbol. It was a force that people couldn't help but pay attention to. Just the tribes and experts that had publicly surrendered were already no less than the King's sect. Many people guessed that there were probably many forces that had yet to surface. The remaining forces of the ancient Heavenly Court were also frighteningly huge. Now that Yi Wudi had come personally, the meaning of this could not be underestimated even when the ancient Phoenix realm was still intact, let alone now that it was heavily injured. Many people also remembered that Yi Shiwen seemed to have a very good relationship with Yi Wudi. They called each other brothers. Naturally, he couldn't have come at this time to fight for a woman with his brother. Then, there was only one possibility. He had come to support Yi Shiwen. Hua Menghan is my sister-in-law. Whoever forces her to marry is going against the ancient heavenly court. Yiwudi said. As soon as he came out, his attitude was extremely unyielding. Such an attitude made many forces apprehensive. Unlike many kings' sect, the ancient heavenly court only had Yiwudi as the heir in name. Everyone followed his lead. Encountering such a young and unyielding leader, it wasn't impossible for a war to break out. This had also given the ancient Phoenix world a headache. They hadn't paid attention to Yi Shiwen at first. He was just a puny human. He wasn't a martial great sex inheritances. However, he had dared to challenge them. Wasn't he courting death? However, now that Yiwudi had come personally, his purpose was very obvious. He was supporting Yi Shiwen. This was not to be trifled with. The Dragon Island was burning with anger. This was not only a slap in the face of the ancient Phoenix realm, but also a slap in the face of the Dragon Island. The ancient heavenly court was not to be trifled with, but the Dragon Island was not to be trifled with. In terms of foundation, the Dragon Island had a longer history than the ancient heavenly court. For a moment, swords were drawn. Everyone realized that this matter was going to be very serious. Chapter 2360. Neither the ancient heavenly court nor the Dragon Island could be insulted lightly. However, the ancient Phoenix world was also involved in this. It could be said that they were in a dilemma. The Dragon Island was undoubtedly the most suitable ally in the eyes of the ancient Phoenix world. However, the ancient heavenly court's background wasn't bad. Their influence was also enormous. It would have been best if Yiwudi had come to participate in the competition. However, Yiwudi had come to support Yi Shiwen. Yi Shiwen had disrupted the marriage contest of the ancient Phoenix world last time, and many big shots of the ancient Phoenix world had a bad impression of Yi Shiwen. Feng Nantian couldn't wait to tear Yi Shiwen's body into 10,000 pieces. So, how could he be willing to let Yi Shiwen take Hua Menghan away? Marrying Hua Menghan to the Dragon Island was the best way to maximize the benefits. Only the Dragon Island would pay a considerable price to create the strongest bloodline and physique. The other forces wouldn't be like the Dragon Island. This was the most troublesome thing. Yi Shiwen wouldn't bring any benefits to them. In order to deal with the sudden arrival of Yiwudi, the surviving elders of the ancient Phoenix world gathered together for a meeting. What should we do? The Heavenly Court's attitude is very unyielding. Are we going to offend the Heavenly Court in order to rope in the Dragon Island? An elder said worriedly. The name of the ancient Heavenly Court and the other forces that had surfaced one after another were enough to make them very afraid. So what if we offend them? Can they offer better conditions than the Dragon Island? Humph! Even if it's the Heavenly Court, will they dare to find trouble with us? Everyone knows that our ancient Phoenix realm is weak at this time. Because of this, we can't show any weakness. Otherwise, wouldn't they see through our weakness? A tough elder said in a cold voice. At this time, everyone knows that our ancient Phoenix realm is weak. That's right. Choosing the Dragon Island is undoubtedly the best choice. Apart from the Dragon Island, there won't be such generous conditions. An elder echoed. Are you sure that the Dragon Island's conditions are generous? Apart from those things, we are at a complete disadvantage in the alliance. Are we going to be a burden to the Dragon Island in the future? Someone immediately retorted. The point isn't the Dragon Island, but the ancient Heavenly Court's overbearing attitude. They're going too far. The unyielding elder retorted. Do you want Hua Menghan to be taken away by Yi Shiwen? The Dragon Island is much stronger than Yi Shiwen. Suddenly, the entire conference room burst into a heated debate. The opinions of everyone present weren't unified. Originally, the opinion of Hua Menghan was very divided. Not everyone agreed with this idea, especially since Phoenix King had died in battle to preserve the lives of his clansmen. His corpse hadn't even turned cold yet, but he had already done such a thing. It was very disappointing. Many people had a feeling of sympathy for the death of a rabbit. They didn't dare to imagine how their descendants would be treated in the future. Are we going to reject the Heavenly Court? Are they not to be trifled with? Someone said with uncertainty. Silence, everyone. At this moment, Feng Nantian finally spoke. We don't have that much time to continue waiting. I understand everyone's feelings. However, our ancient Phoenix realm can't be mentioned in the same breath as before. I hope that everyone can understand this clearly. Since I'm the acting clan leader now, I'm the one who has the final say. The engagement plan will proceed according to the original plan. No one can stop it. If the ancient heavenly court really wants to go against us, do you think that the Dragon Island can just watch and do nothing? Therefore, everyone doesn't need to worry. The marriage between the Dragon Island and the ancient Phoenix realm proceeded as scheduled. Some people hadn't expected that the ancient Phoenix realm would eventually give up on the marriage under the pressure of the heavenly court. However, many people felt that the ancient Phoenix realm was somewhat unfair in this regard. Hua Minghan had already been betrothed to someone else. Moreover, they were in love with each other. So, it was the same as breaking up the affectionate couple. They knew that the ancient Phoenix realm was powerful. However, they couldn't stop themselves from thinking this way. The Dragon Island was obviously satisfied. However, the heavenly court was obviously very dissatisfied. Especially, the leader of the heavenly court, Yi Wudi, had come in person. How could they let this matter go? But even so, a month later, when the Dragon Island really went to the betrothal ceremony and handed down the betrothal gifts, there were still countless people who went to watch the ceremony. As long as they had a bit of status, almost all of them went together. Everyone was very clear that this betrothal was likely to evolve into a world-shaking collision. Suddenly, there was a huge crowd of people. All of them were influential people in the ancient Phoenix realm. Even some big shots from other worlds had come. It was very lively for a moment. This engagement would be held in the Sky Phoenix Lake. Although it was a lake, it wasn't actually on the ground, but in the sky. It was an island floating in the void. It was very huge. It was faintly discernible in the clouds. It was like a fairyland. The waterfall that fell from the sky was like a silver curtain, covering everything in it. There was a huge crowd. However, the Sky Phoenix Lake was very big. It could accommodate all of them. Many attendants and guests were shuttling back and forth. They were toasting each other. It was a very lively scene. However, everyone's mind wasn't on eating and drinking. Instead, they were focused on the Dragon Island and the Heavenly Court. Only Yi Wudi and an old man had come from the Heavenly Court's side. Nobody knew who he was. He just followed Yi Wudi's every step. However, nobody dared to look down on him. It was obvious that he was Yi Wudi's confidant. With the current power of the ancient Heavenly Court, he was also an extraordinary person. On the Dragon Island side, there were obviously more people. Among the crowd, there was a middle-aged man who walked like a dragon and tiger. It was none other than Ao Chaozong's father, Ao Dongxing. Compared to his son, Ao Dongxing seemed to be much inferior. The student had surpassed the master, and this was vividly reflected in Ao Dongxing. However, Ao Dongxing was his son, so naturally, the father's status depended on his son. No one dared to look down on Ao Dongxing. Beside Ao Dongxing, there were many powerful people of the Dragon Clan. This time they came with great momentum. They wanted to completely cut off the other people's delusions. Ao Dongxing pushed the crowd aside and walked straight to Yi Wudi. He said, "Junior, you're Yi Wudi? Don't you think you're being a busybody?" Everyone's spirits were lifted. They felt their hearts tremble. The clash between the two giants was finally about to begin. Be it the Dragon Island or the newly revived ancient Heavenly Court, they were not things that ordinary king-rank sects could compare to. This clash would be like Mars colliding with Earth. It would be incomparably intense. "Junior? Haha." Yi Wudi laughed out loud. "When I was dominating the world, you were still playing in the mud somewhere. How dare you call me Junior? Idiot." "What did you say?" Ao Dongxing's expression immediately darkened. Yi Wudi was even more disrespectful than he had expected. It was practically a slap in the face. No one knew why Yi Wudi said that. They just treated it as a joke. Yi Wudi had only been in the world for a few years. Ao Dongxing had already proven his Tao tens of thousands of years ago. Although he was not as outstanding as Ao Chaozong, those who could prove their Tao were not simple. "I'm being a busybody? Don't you think your Dragon Island is stretching their hands too far?" You want to create the strongest bloodline. Aren't you afraid of shortening your lifespan? Don't you understand this? Yu Wuti said faintly. He completely ignored Ao Dongxing's eyes that looked like he wanted to devour someone. You Dragon Island and Phoenix Clan are already blessed by the heavens. You still want to go against the heavens. I think you are the ones who have lost your heads. Oomph. I don't think so. The combination of the best of the Dragon Clan and the Phoenix Clan will definitely have the potential to become an emperor in the future. Ao Dongxing said coldly. The surrounding people gasped. It turned out that the Dragon Clan was planning to pass the test. Ever since the Dragon Ancestor and Phoenix Ancestor passed away, no Monarch-level characters appeared in the Dragon Clan and the Phoenix Clan. They actually wanted to combine the strongest bloodline of the two clans to create a Monarch-level character. If it was really possible, then the future development of the Dragon Clan and the Phoenix Clan would be limitless. It was not impossible for them to dominate the world again. At this moment, everyone finally understood why the ancient Phoenix realm could unite with the Dragon Island. They didn't hesitate to offend the ancient heavenly court. It turned out that they had such a big plan. This matter was not difficult to guess. It was just that many people didn't think about it. At this moment, some people who reacted faster had already thought about it. No wonder all the major forces wanted to stop them. If the Dragon Clan and the Phoenix Clan really became the power, then the others would not have a good time. You think a good bloodline will definitely be able to achieve the Tao? I think you are getting more and more muddle-headed as you get older. You actually still believe in this fallacy at this stage. Yu Wuti didn't care at all. Moreover, I don't care if you want to test it on other people. But she can't. It doesn't matter if she comes or not. You guys can't succeed today. God Lord Yi, we, the ancient Phoenix realm, respect you as the leader of a force. We treat you as a distinguished guest. We don't want you to cause trouble. If that's the case, we, the ancient Phoenix realm, do not welcome you. At this moment, Feng Nantian appeared nearby and said coldly. Everyone looked over. The ancient Phoenix realm wanted to join hands with the Dragon Island to drive Yu Wuti out. Cause trouble? How come I don't know about it? I only know that she is my sister-in-law since she has been betrothed to Yi Shiwen. Whoever wants to touch my sister-in-law will have to go through me, Yu Wuti indifferently said. He didn't waver because of Feng Nantian's words. TSK, TSK. Everyone in the ancient Phoenix realm is like this. Even I feel bitterly disappointed. How long has it been since the previous Phoenix King perished? His corpse hasn't even turned cold yet. Yet, you people are already so impatient to leave. When the tree falls, the monkeys scatter. Everyone in the ancient Phoenix realm is like this. It's no wonder that there aren't any monarchs anymore. Feng Nantian was caught red-handed. He was about to get angry. But he heard a loud shout coming from the horizon. Who is it? Chapter 2361. Who is it? A loud shout was heard. Along with this shout, a figure suddenly appeared in the void. Boundless divine might raged out. Without any hesitation, the Nanming leaf fire instantly ignited, wanting to kill the person who came in the blink of an eye. The raging flames turned the sky into a sea of fire. Everyone was shocked by the raging flames in an instant. Rip! There was a loud sound, as if the entire sky was torn apart. A pair of big hands stretched out from the void and suddenly pulled to both sides, directly tearing the Nanming leaf fire apart. The Nanming leaf fire was instantly grabbed by the big hands and was crushed into sparks that filled the sky. Set up the formation. The figures suddenly shouted, and then a few figures jumped out at the same time, setting up a formation. You really came? You overestimate yourself. Feng Nantian's eyes were somewhat cold. His eyes were indifferent. Obviously, he had already expected that someone would come to cause trouble, and he was even prepared. These experts had long been lying in ambush, intending to catch Yi Shiwen in one fell swoop. How dare you? Yu Wuti was furious and looked at Feng Nantian. At this moment, everyone understood from the conversation between the two that the person who suddenly jumped in was not someone else, but Yi Shiwen. Everyone looked at Feng Nantian with some fear in their eyes. What a vicious heart! What a meticulous plan! with these experts lying in ambush. Even if Yi Shiwen wanted to cause trouble, he would have to see if he had the ability to do so. Why wouldn't I dare? Your heavenly court can't control me. Feng Nantian sneered, then looked at the sky and said, capture them all. If they resist, kill them. As soon as he finished speaking, the divine formation was set up. They had been training for a long time, and they were waiting for today to capture Yi Shiwen in one fell swoop. In an instant, a few people each occupied a corner, forming a huge divine formation. These are all gods? Many outsiders couldn't help but gasp when they saw this scene. How extravagant. Tao-confirming experts could be considered the cream of the crop in any force. They took out a few experts in one go to set up a divine formation. It was conceivable that the ancient Phoenix realm was prepared this time. Feng Nantian sneered, and his eyes were extremely cold. Scram! A loud shout was heard, and a huge golden hand suddenly slammed down from the sky. Boom! With a bang, the entire divine formation shook violently. Then cracks appeared and grew larger and larger. With a bang, it completely turned into nothingness, turning into a rain of light that scattered in all directions. Pooh! 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 Before the gods who had set up the god formation could react, they were sent flying and spat out a mouthful of blood. How is this possible? Feng Nanshan's eyes widened instantly. He was fully prepared for this matter. He also knew that Yi Shiwen had already proven his Tao. After all, it was something that happened 200 years ago. It was no longer a secret now. There would always be a way to investigate it. According to the normal situation, what could Yi Shiwen, who had just achieved Tao 200 years ago, do? Among the masters who set up the divine formation, there were even masters in the late immortal level. It was more than enough to suppress a beginner immortal level. However, he did not expect that he would be able to break it with one move. The endless light rain dispersed, and everyone saw a cyan figure in the sky. Who else could it be if it wasn't Yi Shiwen? Ha ha, you went for wool and came home shorn. Yi Wudi laughed loudly. Yi Shiwen landed directly. His expression was cold, and there was inexplicable coldness in his eyes. What are you doing here? Feng Nantian asked with a cold face. If he could take him down with lightning speed, it would naturally be good to intimidate people. However, Yi Shiwen had broken it so easily, and he was the one who was slapped in the face. He was already regretting in his heart. If he knew this would happen, he would have done it himself. He did not believe that he could not deal with a mere immortal level. However, it was useless to regret now. I'm here to pay tribute to the Phoenix King, Yi Shiwen said faintly, but his voice was extremely loud. In an instant, it spread throughout the entire ancient Phoenix world. The people on Feng Nanshan's side were even more embarrassed. Yi Shiwen was here to slap their faces and pay tribute to the Phoenix King. This was a blatant mockery. They had done such a chilling thing before the Phoenix King's corpse had even turned cold. As expected, the faces of the representatives and powerhouses of the other clans revealed an expression of as expected. No matter what, such behavior was indeed despicable. Naturally, they were also extremely disdainful. However, Feng Nantian was now the acting clan leader. In the future, he might have the opportunity to advance further and become the new Phoenix King of the ancient Phoenix world. The Phoenix King was a title that was recognized by countless people. Not every clan leader of the Phoenix clan could become the Phoenix King. You're an outsider. What qualifications do you have to pay tribute to the Phoenix King? Feng Nantian said while gritting his teeth. He could not wait to tear Yi Shiwen into pieces, but he could not do it in public. He could not settle the differences within the ancient Phoenix world. He could only use his authority as the clan leader to temporarily suppress it. Moreover, he could clearly feel that the old man beside Yi Wudi had been using his divine sense to lock onto him. This was a blatant warning. He did not put Feng Nantian in his eyes at all. Feng Nantian was extremely angry in his heart. The things that he had planned to do had happened again and again. This had caused his reputation as the acting clan leader to suffer a setback. Am I an outsider? Menghan is the adopted daughter of the Phoenix King. Everyone knows that she is the Phoenix goddess. Since I am her husband, I am naturally the son-in-law of the ancient phoenix world. How can I be considered an outsider? Yi Shiwen indifferently said. Feng Nantian gnashed his teeth in hatred. Yi Shiwen had not mentioned the marriage between the ancient phoenix world and the Dragon Island. It was as if this matter had never happened. Yi Shiwen had insisted that Hua Minghan was his wife. This had made Feng Nantian feel completely unreasonable. The surrounding people thought for a moment. It was indeed as Yi Shiwen had said. Yi Shiwen was the son-in-law of the ancient phoenix world. So, he was naturally not an outsider. This conflict was clearly a precursor to the internal strife of the ancient phoenix world. That's right. I've never heard that a son-in-law can't come to pay respects to his father-in-law. There's no such logic in this world, right? Yi Wudi also fanned the flames from the side and said, Feng Nantian felt like vomiting blood. If you want to pay respects to the Phoenix King, then go to the Morning Hall. You have clearly come here to cause trouble. And you still dare to say that you have come to pay respects to the Phoenix King? He could only clench his teeth and said, If you want to pay respects to the Phoenix King, then please go to another place. We have set up a Morning Hall. It doesn't matter how long you want to pay respects to him. But don't disrupt our engagement ceremony today. Feng Nantian. Yi Shiwen coldly glanced at him and said, I don't care if you want to grovel and surrender to the Dragon Island. But you have so many daughters and you insist on giving them to my wife. Do you think that I can ignore this? Feng Nantian had the urge to vomit blood. It was true that they had formed an alliance with the Dragon Island. But what did he mean by surrendering to the Dragon Island? Yi Shiwen's words were as malicious as one could imagine. His words had nailed him to the position of a despicable person who had betrayed his own race for glory in just a few short sentences. What was this about giving his daughters to the Dragon Island? Their marriage wasn't about surrendering to the Dragon Island. Yi Shiwen's voice had barely faded when the faces of some experts of the ancient Phoenix world became strange. These people were the higher-ups of the ancient Phoenix world. They knew that this was a special period. However, it was very obvious that the Dragon Island was leading the alliance. So, they had felt somewhat sullen at first. But they had suddenly thought of the same thing after Yi Shiwen had mentioned it. They weren't as unbearable as Yi Shiwen had said. However, the more they thought about it, the more sullen they became. They were the dignified descendants of the ancient Phoenix world's Phoenix ancestor. They had noble bloodline. However, they had to submit to their old rival of countless years now. So, they naturally felt very unhappy in their hearts. Yi Shiwen, don't slander me. Feng Nantian's complexion turned ashen. He said while gnashing his teeth, Whether it's slander or not, you know it in your heart. However, this has nothing to do with me. I just want to take Minghan away. You guys asked her to come out and speak. Yi Shiwen shot a glance at him and said, Feng Nantian obviously couldn't ask Hua Minghan to come out and confront Yi Shiwen at this time. Otherwise, wouldn't it be a complete mess? One must know that Hua Minghan was still insisting on not getting married. Everyone had more or less guessed this. However, his face would be slapped swollen if this was exposed. Moreover, the people of the ancient Phoenix world and the Dragon Island's reputation would be further solidified in their hearts. Humph, don't go too far. This engagement is the beginning of the alliance between the ancient Phoenix world and the Dragon Island. Don't blame me for being impolite if you don't know what's good for you. Feng Nantian wished that he could slap Yi Shiwen to death. The surrounding people had already begun to discuss spiritedly. Various kinds of whispers had begun to appear, especially those experts who weren't part of his faction. They were looking at him in an even more unfriendly manner. Engagement? Ah, this is ridiculous. Who has ever heard of an engagement where both parties aren't present? The corner of Yi Shiwen's mouth couldn't help but reveal a mocking expression. Feng Nantian, do you really think that you can cover the sky with one hand? Yi Shiwen, you've ruined my Dragon Clan's plans time and time again. It seems that you've made up your mind to go against my Dragon Clan. A tyrannical god had come out of the Dragon Clan at this time. The Dragon Island had also sent experts in order to facilitate this matter. In fact, it was enough for a Dao-confirming expert to personally go and act as a matchmaker anywhere. Yishuan didn't pay any attention to him. He was fixedly staring at Feng Nantian. He had completely regarded that expert of the dragon clan as heir. Yishuan, I'm talking to you. Did you hear me? Are you deaf? That expert of the dragon clan suddenly felt that he had been ignored. So, he became furious. Who do you think you are? Do you think you're worthy of talking to me? Get lost. Yishuan didn't even turn his head as he replied. He had completely ignored that expert. Good. That expert of the dragon clan was seething with anger. He suddenly released boundless divine power. The weather changed in an instant. The god's anger could cause millions of corpses to fall and the earth to shake. You're tuning in to the Warrior Lore YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.